It is
Hello.
me, PSA
Hi.
Sitch, and
Who
Adam
who who are you talking
friended.
to?
I'm talking to the audience. What's going on, everybody?
There's an
Hello
audience? What are you talking
there.
about? I
Hey
thhat this was a
there.
Truman Show. There's
This is
someone
not the
people are
Truman
listening
Show.
to us. I thought we were
I
just
know.
talking privately.
I know.
Holy
It's
shit. How long
scary.
have people been listening to these
This whole
conversations?
time, Adam, like when he would look over at the chat, he just thought he was like tripping,
Uh-huh.
and he was just seeing his internal thoughts displayed through
I
text.
know. That's
Okay,
what
he
I
didn't
thought.
realize. He didn't realize there's actual people there. Anyway, what's up, people?
I know.
So,
People are already complaining about this topic, but you know what I got to say?
what?
Fuck you.
I saw people complaining and excited to talk about it, to listen to it. Okay.
Okay, good.
Right. That's usually the way it is. But so we're going to talk about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. But before we do that,
Uh-huh.
I saw this clip. This clip just jumped out of me, and I was like, oh my God, we have to watch this. Okay. This is Trevor Noah on his podcast now. Right. So it's just so crazy. You have Jon Stewart, who, I mean, obviously we, talked about him on Sunday. And yes, we don't really like Jon Stewart anymore, of course. But there was a time period when he was like the daddy of the left. He was the
He was the
living
god,
legend,
yeah.
right? He was single-handedly pulling Comedy Central forward with the Daily Show. And then when he retired, it left this giant hole in Comedy Central. And instead of going to like John Oliver, right, who would have been who you would have expected to be the replacement, right? He was on the show.
Mm-hmm.
He was, very funny on the show. He's a funny comedian guy. He's a competent guy. They said, no, fuck you. You're too white, John Oliver. Okay. We
Ooh,
need someone.
painful.
Yeah, we need a little someone more colorful, right? And they don't even have to be, American. They don't even have to be someone who's like living in America for that long, right? I mean, I guess John Oliver wasn't American, even though he'd been on the Daily Show for years. But they're like, let's just get someone that like no one has ever heard of, right? Let's get a random person that no one has ever heard of, who's not even American. I know. Let's get Trevor Noah. And they
Yeah.
bring Trevor Noah in, and of course, like their ratings just drop like a rock because no one knows who this guy is, cares who he is. It's just completely like baffling. And the Daily Show
The
basically
perfect
begins
example of the
its
meritocracy, right?
yes, exactly. And it's so funny because like John Oliver, he saw the writing on the wall. He knew that he should have been chosen. He leaves, right? He does his own show, and I'm sure he's making a buttload of money at HBO with his own show now.
Oh yeah,
But
his show's super popular.
right, and so Trevor Noah's on Daily Show, and it just never recovers. And he's there were a lot of times that we would cover things that he would say and we'd be like, this guy is so bizarre and so weird. Like obviously, he grew up in a country that literally had, racial segregation when he was a child and his parents were mixed race and it created all these problems. And that's all fine and good, but it's hard, it's weird to bring that into like the American experience in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like I remember there was this one clip that we covered of him where he was defending this was during the BLM stuff. There was a guy who was drunk driving. He was black. He was drunk driving and he fell asleep in line at a Wendy's
Yeah.
in his car.
What was that
Okay.
guy's name? There was a big police shootout from that thing.
I don't remember that guy's name, but and so they call the police because they're like, there's a guy who's like drunk,
You can't
just
sleep in a
asleep in his
fucking
car.
drive-through, okay,
Yeah,
guys?
yeah, he's completely
Wake the
blocked off the
fuck
drive-through.
up.
Right. So the police come and they're like talking to him and he's totally chill. And they're like, okay, like we have to like bring you to jail because you're drunk driving. And he freaks out. Okay. And he starts resisting arrest like crazy. And he's like running around. This is all on camera, by the way. And he even at some point they're trying to tase him.
He grabs the guy's
He
taser,
yeah,
yeah.
he
The cop's
somehow gets
taser.
the taser out of the cop's hand and is like trying to fucking shoot the cop with the taser. There's two cops. The cop's like dodging the fucking taser prongs that he's shooting at him. And so the other cop is like, stop. And he obviously shoots him, right? He obviously shoots this guy. And Trevor Noah's like, oh, this is such a tragedy. Couldn't they have just done something else? Did the police really have to show up? Shouldn't they have just sent a social worker? That's like,
Oh my
fuck
God, the
you.
social worker would have been tased so fast.
Yeah,
This guy
exactly.
had to be on his third strike, right? Like, what the
Right.
fuck? Why are you doing this?
I don't know. I mean, well, I mean, being drunk driving, could be a serious charge, but just like, it's like, fuck you, man. This guy's drunk driving, which is, first of all, super fucking dangerous. Okay. Lots of people die or are severely injured from drunk drivers.
Yeah.
It's not a
The
joke.
drunk never dies. Okay. The drunk
I
always
know. That's
seems to
what's
walk
always,
away from the
yeah,
accident. The
that's the
family
worst
of
part.
4, they're all murdered.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So you have some guy who's doing this highly dangerous activity, and then he's stealing a police officer's weapon and attacking them with them, and Trevor Noah is still crying boo-hoo-hoo tears. And at this point, I'm just like, okay, Trevor Noah is like fucking insane. He's like completely like detached from reality, right? And so I'm not surprised to see this clip because I've been saying this for years. You've been saying this for years. This is like a flashback from the past, okay? The CRT far left perspective of race relations is the exact same as the far right ethno nationalist Groyper view of race. They just have a different color in mind. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
And so
they're supremacists.
yes. And they're segregationists. Well, they all say like, "Oh, I'm not a supremacist. I just want everyone to be
bullshit.
I want everyone to have their own little playpen, right?" So
bullshit.
I know.
Bullshit.
So
why do they talk so much about IQ if they're not supremacists?
Well,
tell me that. What's going on there?
Listen. I mean, they're just jealous of the Asians and the Jews. Okay,
Is that
we can't all be an Asian Jew. But it's so I'm just glad that this clip is out here now, just so everyone can show like the power level can be shown, the mask can be slipped. Everyone can see what's actually going on. It has been going on within this movement for years.
Just before we move on from Jon Stewart, though, like I think the big thing with Jon Stewart that a lot of people remember is when he went to bat for the firefighters and the people in New York that huffed the September 11th toxic fumes for days and days and days, and half of them got some kind of lung disease.
Yes.
And the federal government was like, "Oh, we're not doing anything with these people."
Right.
Jeez.
Right. Yes.
Buyer beware, right?
Yes.
That was like a high point for Jon Stewart. And then later, right? 2017, 2020, someone told him, all those people you defended, John, they all have white privilege. You saved a bunch of colonialists.
Right.
You piece of shit. And now he's like completely doing penance. Oh my God. I had no idea it was karma. All these white people trying to save people after September 11th.
Well, as we learned on Sunday, he has to show off for his young female staff.
Yeah.
Of young millennials and Zoomers. So
I'm sure New York City obviously is a cavalcade of races. I'm sure there was plenty of black guys in there. I'm sure there's plenty of Latino guys in there. So,
but you can get funding for them. That's okay.
Right. But the social justice warriors are not going to call that out. They're going to say, look, the fire department is overwhelmingly white. How dare you?
Okay, so let's listen to this clip here. This is pretty crazy.
Even some of the things you're saying now, I found myself wondering, and this applies to America, and then maybe it'll go to other places in a different way because Finland ties in. Do you think that integration was the right move? Like, and now I'm separating two things because I know in America people are like, well, of course, I mean, there was racism and there's segregation. And I go, yeah, no. I'm separating them. Let's separate someone being oppressed and someone not being able to get a job and someone not being able to get a bank loan. Let's take all of those, the negative things away, because I'll put myself out personally and say, I think whether we're talking about gifted kids who are anomalous, let's say, to the norm, whether we are talking about and I mean anything that does not fit into a category. I think the part of the reason Finland is able to do it is because, have you been to Finland?
It's very homogeneous.
I've been to Finland. You know who's in Finland? Finnish people. That's it. That's it. And because they're all Finnish, there's an idea of like, no, we all head in the same direction. We all know what our actions mean. And that's a really powerful thing I've learned in communicating with other people. When I'm in a room with anyone where we start to tie together multiple things. So if I'm in a room with black people, already there's like an implicit trust because we know what certain actions, words, and vibes mean. And then you're in a room with another African. Already. This person. Now, even if you shout at me, I know what your shout means. The same way an Italian knows what an Italian shout means.
Yeah.
Right? I know I'm prefacing it with a lot because it's a loaded question.
Yes.
But I would love to know.
I mean, first of all, it's hilarious to me that Charles Murray entered into the room and I didn't even notice. Okay.
That's crazy. Well, I kept thinking, I'm like, yeah, the Bloods and the Crips when they get together. Oh man, yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's just they feel for one another.
They have that
This is
shared
trust.
African heritage, you know.
I mean, this is so inept. It's completely inept. Yeah. What do you think? Black guys don't fight other black guys? White people don't fight other white people? What the fuck?
Well, it's funny, you know, like most crime is done, you know, to people of their same
Of the same
you know,
race. Yeah,
same
exactly.
race, right?
Yes, exactly.
So it's just
Like this
oh,
guy's
really?
just
Okay.
like, I trust anyone.
Well,
Look naive. Oh,
yeah.
so naive.
There's a thing that you could say here that's true, which is that yes, obviously, if you have people who have a shared cultural background, they're going to be able to, they're going to communicate in a way that's different, or they're going to have an understanding in their communication on average, right? Because like we have to all talk about this in the average, because obviously, you know, you can interact with lots of people that share your exact same cultural background, your exact same race, gender, and you're like, this person's fucking crazy, or like, what the hell's wrong with this person, right? That happens every day.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
Constantly.
Right, so, yes.
Constantly, right. But so on average, yes, on average, sure, if you and a stranger come from the same culture and you interact with each other, yeah, sure, you can definitely have, you know, maybe you'll have an easier time getting to some sort of cultural understanding or whatever. And that's totally fine. That's why I've always said I think countries should protect their cultures and cultural attitudes, and well, assuming their cultural attitudes aren't like, you know, genital mutilation or something. But, you know, countries within reason obviously should be, you know, protecting their
Countries
cultural
should protect
attitudes, and that's
our
fine.
culture. Let's be real here.
Okay, that's true. American culture, right? No, but so that's fine, right? That's totally fine. But to like map it onto racial segregation is weird, especially in America, right? Especially in America, it's even extra weirder because you're like, well, you know, like America was started by a bunch of different white ethnic groups from all over Europe that had different cultures.
Yeah, and they all assimilated, but just the history of America makes this impossible. Just because, what are we going to do? I mean, we have 13% of our population is black, and they are a lot of them are descendants of slaves. So they did try this project, I think, back in the 1800s, where they were like, we'll carve out a country in
Liberia.
Africa and call it Liberia, right? And we'll ship
Right.
everyone back. That's so unfair to the people who are part of our history. Like we
Right.
have to find a way to get past that. It's funny that you got some guy here, a South African. South
Yeah, I
African,
know.
coming in here and trying to say, you know, we in America, we need segregation again. It's doubtful that he understands or that he even knows about the history of Liberia and
yeah,
descendants
I don't know.
of
Maybe he's
slaves.
in favor of it. It's just, it's weird too, because like, you know, where I've lived my whole life, it's been places that are very mixed
Mhm.
between white people, Hispanic people, black people.
Oh yeah.
And like to me, that's never been the divide. Like I know tons of, you know, people of various races that all interact with each other, all have the same cultural attitudes. The thing that's a much greater divide I've noticed is if you have someone that's like just from a different area of the country, then there's like there can be different cultural attitudes that they're like, like they're not exactly the same. I mean, people still get along, obviously, but they're different. Or B, if there's like massive class divides, like to me, that's a much larger cultural difference is between class and like various ethnic groups.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, I've lived all over, and there is a huge, like I moved from California to New Orleans after college just to experience that kind of culture shock. And it is, I mean, it's a giant culture shock.
Right.
Growing up in Southern California by comparison to New Orleans. So, and I lived in New York, and New York is quite a bit different too. New York is like, oh my God, it's just like all different languages, all different people. Yeah.
Right.
I guess there is kind of a common, but there's a bunch of cultures in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
You walk into some Mediterranean restaurant, it's like a time warp, or you're like in a completely different culture, right?
Right.
Yeah. So this is, it's just so weird. Like if a white guy was saying this, oh my God, immediately it'd be like
immediate
CNN,
cancellation. Yes.
Yeah, CBS, everyone would be all. If John Oliver came out and said this, right? Oh yeah, we should segregate America.
He'd lose his show. in
He
a second.
would, yeah.
Yes,
But this dumbass, he
I
could
know.
say anything.
I know.
I just, how does that look? I'm curious. Look, and I obviously I've had a bunch of black friends throughout my past that are lean conservative that
Hmm.
have told me, oh, they hate the term African American. They're like, why, like, why am I being called an African? I'd never been to Africa. You know,
Right.
I grew up here. I grew up in Fresno. What the
Right. I have
fuck?
no. I have no cultural identifying like spirit with Africa or
Yeah,
anything.
exactly. So
Right.
they're super offended. I think because a lot of conservatives are super offended by the African American term. They're like, you know,
Sure.
call me black, right? I'm Black American is more palatable for them. So just and this like he just throws it like he literally said, oh, yeah, you're talking to an African,
Well, he means I'm assuming he means actual
like an
African,
actual
right?
African.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like actual African.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, like not my parents, my great grandparents came to America like over 100 and I guess like it was like 120 years ago, I guess. And from mostly like Russia, like I'm not like, oh my God, I feel connection with the Russian people because 120 years ago,
yeah.
someone came. It's like Jesus Christ,
If people
you
called
know.
you a Russian American, how
I'd be
would
like,
you?
what?
Yeah,
Like
it'd be
the
like they'd
fuck?
taken something away from you, right?
Yeah, I would just be like, I don't. I mean, the only thing I know about Russia is like obviously Putin sucks, and I had to read Nicholas and Alexandria in middle school, and that was about it. Right? I don't know. I don't know that much. I don't have really a connection to Russia.
So many people on the left, they have good intentions, right? They want to make amends for the slavery experience, but they end up fucking shit up by doing that. Like they're the ones that came up with the African American term. So,
Right, right.
and it was probably foisted on a lot of people by some liberal separatist people who were like, yeah, you know, we don't want to be part of America. A lot of
Hmm.
the left hates America. Like they have just the America bad running through and through. So, which
Well,
I
that's
mean,
what's.
I get
Mhm.
if you're in a situation where you feel like you're getting a bad deal in America, of course you're going to hate America, right? If you're in
Right.
any situation where you feel like you're getting a bad deal, you're going to hate whoever you perceive is giving you that bad deal. So I get it. I do get it. We just have to work on ways to fix that.
Well, and that's what's kind of weird, and what part of what I don't like about right now is like, yeah, you've had this whole contingency. Obviously, not everyone on the left. You have this contingency of left wing thought that's like America is a racist country. It's a racially supremacist country. Everything in America is rooted in a system of racism. And so if you believe that, then obviously, yeah, America bad, right? That's going to be the predominant attitude
Yeah.
if that's the way you feel. And now, you have like the mirror version of that on the right. Not everyone on the right, obviously, but some people on the right who are like, oh, America's all, controlled by evil left-wing oligarchs who, want to import non-white people and take your money away and do XYZ, right? And America's bad for like the opposite reason, which is kind of funny. So you have two factions on opposite sides that both think America bad, both believing that the other side is controlling it through some sort of conspiracy theory.
Yeah, and they're at odds with one another because so many people on the left, when people on the right want some sort of education that acknowledges the goodness of America, like where
Right.
we got it right,
Yes.
they characterize that wrongly, I think, constantly as, oh, we want to completely whitewash history and forget about all the things that we did wrong. Where it's like, no, no, no. Both. I mean, it's things have tipped more towards the left now. I think the
Yeah.
left is the one that really wants to make education one sided, and maybe the right just wants to make education more holistic because they have lost power in the educational realm. Like now, obviously, I know you've probably read some of the stuff about Christopher Rufo going after the Department of Education and trying to defund a lot of this America Bad CRT type stuff.
Right.
Once conservatives are in control, I mean, I think maybe they will tilt a little more towards, okay, let's
Yeah.
whitewash
Right.
history a
Right.
little bit just to make things just to make people more patriotic.
Well, like the way this works and the way for people to conceptualize it is like So you have the Overton window gets pushed far to the left. And
Yeah.
so then it's like pushed so far to the left that you have a coalition of people on the center and the right who will believe like, okay, let's promote like America, like the good things that America did and America has done in the past. We don't want to cover up bad things. We just want to promote good things, right? We'll say
Yeah.
that's like, I don't know, we'll say that's like 80% of the people in the, the other faction, right? They'll have this kind of joint idea. But within that 80%, there'll be like 20% of that of people who say like, oh, we shouldn't talk about anything that America has done as bad. And so like, as long as the Overton window is pushed so far to the left, those two factions are going to be joined together to try to pull it back. And then as soon as they can pull it back, that's when that 20% faction suddenly is like, oh, well, now that the Overton window's moved far enough back in my direction, now I can start advocating for the things I want to do. And it's just kind of the way it goes on both the left and right, back and forth.
This is why we should focus on structuring our institutions so the tension between both these factions is constantly there. Like I do think the reason why our school system, and who knows how many kids have been completely fucked up by the school system just doing the America bad thing and basically indoctrinating them from birth that America is a racist, sexist, homophobic place. And that's why it sucks. And they're going to, for the rest of their lives, believe that.
Right.
Yeah. Because the left is pretty much just taking over education like wholeheartedly. So
it's kind of blackpilling because it's made me believe that you basically need to have kind of like the Watchman squid. You need to have an enemy. You need to have some kind of threat looming that keeps the extremists in line or keeps them more aligned with the moderates. And so, like exactly what you're saying, you need to have kind of like a left-right competition in education, I think, to keep things in the center, essentially, or to keep like a happy, balanced medium. And maybe there should be some kind of like weird, DEI based on politics, function where you want to have education in America be like 50-50 balanced left-right perspective in terms of like teachers and administrators and things of that nature.
we do it in politics, but the fact that in these institutions we're sort of not really allowed to look at people's politics, it's very easy to drift into just one political faction controls everything. We're not supposed to look at people's politics, but everyone in the institution knows, okay, well, everybody's progressive, right?
Right.
When we do it in the open, like there's complete transparency, like in Congress, right? People literally have a little letter next to their name. Yeah. Then all of a sudden we get it, right? We understand this is like a clash of ideas that we're going to use to kind of come up with the best way to format public policy. Yeah.
That'd be an interesting thing and I think it'd be a little difficult because I think just naturally people that have more left-wing personalities are going to be drawn to education anyway than people on the right. But it would be interesting experiment for like Rufo or Haidt or Trump or somebody to do like a test school or they try to get, some kind of school that is the teachers and the administration is split 50-50 to see what happens.
Yeah. I wonder if you could get them. I wonder if you could get the left to buy into this if you just raised teacher salary, because I do think you would attract more right-wing pragmatists if teachers just, oh my God. I looked into teaching, obviously. Everyone looks into a lot of different careers. I looked into teaching and man, I was like, I'm going to starve. I'm going to fucking starve if I become a teacher. And everyone I know that is a teacher, it's horrible money. So
yeah.
Who can do that? So is there more to this? Okay.
Oh yeah, there's more.
Integration was the right solution, maybe. On the other side of, America, of civil rights.
Hold on. You had to hear this
question.
Yes.
But I would love to know if you think integration was the right solution, maybe. On the other side of, America, of civil rights.
Yeah. No, I don't. And I don't think it's actually that controversial if you understand that segregation and integration weren't the only options. Like those are within those two options, it may seem like integration is the more progressive. Like, of course, we don't want segregation. But again, when you're being integrated into institutions, into a culture that's a supremacist culture, that's a culture that feeds off of hierarchy, that feeds off of insecurity, anxiety, why are we being integrated into that? And so part of it is to question what we're being invited into. And so again, when you think about the example of Finnish being homogenous, you know, nation states are imagined. The national identity is not something that is, you know, God-given. It's not something that, you know, existed for eternity. These identities were created, maintained, you know, made durable over time. And so part of stretching our imagination is to recognize all of the things that have been made up, but made to seem immutable, fixed, you know, intrinsic, including our national sort of identities. And so part of it is really like to denaturalize the things that we take for granted as somehow magically operating to make us feel connected to each other, and ask ourselves, how else can we be connected to engender this sense of solidarity where what I want for my kids, I also want for my neighbor's kids. I want for the kids who don't speak English. I want for the kids who are just arriving. And so again, to push ourselves, when you think about expanding our imagination, to make it more embracing of seeming differences that are not intrinsic, that are not something that are inevitable, you know? My sister-in-law lives in.
It's so funny because I mean, this woman is just literally speaking straight out of CRT. It's all just this, we just want to have this kind of like race essentials view, but we're going to pretend like it's not a race essentials view at all. So we're going to keep saying it's not race essentialism, but then every other thing we say is like bringing us down that exact pathway of, you know, you need to have, you know, the different ethnic groups, the different races, the different cultures be separate from each other and have this connection and this race consciousness because the society that they live in is evil and filled with white supremacy and genocidal and colonialism, blah, 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 blah. But
she completely denies that white progressives even exist. She's like, oh.
Right. Yeah. It's just, it's insane. It's just it's so funny. I'm glad that it's out in the open, that Trevor Noah is talking about this so people can really see what the racist huckster that he is and has been, you know, for years, I guess.
Yeah. It's very mask off. Yeah. We got a bunch of racists here. We got a bunch of fucking racists. It's so obvious. And look, this is the thing I can't stand about the left. Like the left is just afraid to call this shit out. Go, yeah, look, it is a cultural difference, right? You're a fucking racist. That's the difference. You go stand over there on the conservative side.
Right.
If you only want to be around your kind. Look, and the conservatives have kind of ceded the ground on segregation and diversity, all those kinds of things. Like you look at the Trump administration is definitely not picking and choosing based on race or picking and choosing based on meritocracy. So, yeah.
And it is also obnoxious too, because I mean, I'm looking into her Wikipedia. So she's like half black, half Indian. So I don't know. It's like, it's weird that there's all these people
Half
that
black,
are like
half Indian, all
that are
racist.
not even like American. You know, she like was born in India. So it's like, okay, those people are not even American. Come over to tell us how evil America is. Like, thank you.
Yeah.
And this is also a problem too. Like this is straight out of a few years ago. Like this person, you know, they have a faculty fellowship at Harvard. And it's like, obviously she's a sociologist. She got her PhD at Berkeley, you know, shock, right?
This is complete DEI. Not everything that she said sounded very intelligent, but was vapid as fuck. Right?
Yes. These are all old ideas. We've all heard these ideas before. They're ancient ideas. They're racist ideas. And no Harvard faculty would be allowed to say it if they were white at all.
Well, but I mean,
total
just
insanity.
Substantively, it was a woo-woo about how race is like,
magic black people. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Right,
your
right.
internal soul that you can
Feel it.
mix and identify with other people at some sort of magical level. It's
Right.
like, oh God, we need to take sociology back to the science department.
Yes,
Like they've
unfortunately, it's so
literally
sad.
destroyed it. Yeah,
Sociology has been completely corrupted.
yeah. It's not
According to
based
her,
on anything but woo.
I know. According to her Wikipedia, it says in December 2024, she spoke at a gathering of the National Association of Independent Schools, where representatives from 60 Jewish schools were in attendance. Her remarks were condemned as anti-Semitic by various
Yeah,
Jewish
because
groups.
she's doing the Palestine thing.
Yeah. A
Yeah.
student in attendance described her remarks as alluding to Israelis, Jews as genocidal and portraying them as immoral beings who ethnically cleanse and annihilate entire people. She implied that Israelis lack humanity and that they are individuals who do not believe in the seemingly radical notion that all life is sacred.
Look at this. Hamas is working her mouth like a fucking puppet.
Right.
Yeah. Look,
Interesting.
why are these people in positions of power? They're in positions of power because of DEI.
Yeah.
Because of they are the diversity hires. They're totally the diversity hires. This is such fucking garbage. Oh my God. It's this kind of stuff that makes me think, okay, we can do without the Department of Education. It just seems rotten to the core. It seems rotten to the core. It does.
Right.
The fact that you can have, the fact that we've given so many black people a get out of jail free card on racism for the last 50 years. What the fuck? The fuck?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Oh.
I'm going to do the October 7th check here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Gotta.
Sitch is doing the deep dive here.
Interesting. No tweets from that time period. Wow,
because they were all deleted. You got to use the Wayback Machine.
How interesting is that? Okay. Fascinating. Okay. Yeah, they're all gone. She had to get rid of the evidence, I guess.
It's so funny because look, we're giving this woman a pretty harsh critique that I think is well earned, but like she'll come in here and she will just see that it says racism. She'll be like, oh, look at these white fucking racists. So it is a vicious cycle, right?
Yep.
They can't take any critique. Well, look, they literally can't take any critique because anybody white, they're going to say they're being racist, and anyone black giving them critique, they're going to say you're an Uncle Tom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they literally can't take any critique at all.
No, but that's part of the point of the whole process, right?
Yeah.
It's funny.
To insulate yourself.
Like her last tweets, because she didn't tweet till like last October 2024. They're about, remember when like there's that really cringy thing with the Maui people, like kind of stormed that building and were like doing the Maui chants or whatever?
I don't remember now.
Oh, okay. It was like super cringe, but anyway, that's, she's all, obviously she's praising that as like super based. So.
Yeah. God, I'd love to see her SAT scores.
Wow.
I think a lot of these people are stupid. Do you think Trevor Noah is intelligent? I don't think so.
I don't think they're like stupid. Like, I think they can read material and make smart arguments. Like, so much of intelligence is wasted. So much of intelligence is you using your big brain to justify something that you emotionally want to justify, right? And that's how you get smart people who say stupid things.
No, I'm gonna go with stupid.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm gonna go with flat out stupid.
Okay.
Like, I think you could probably have a conversation about I think you could probably have a conversation about sociology. Like, want to talk about Emil Durkheim and suicide and some of the famous discoveries in sociology. the robbers cave stuff. I think if you started diving in on a conversation with this person about that stuff, about tribalism, moral foundation theory, any of the stuff that we talk about, psychology,
I think
right?
I don't know. I
Priming.
think they could probably. Well, I haven't heard them enough. I would imagine. I think Trevor Noah would
I
understand all
will
that stuff.
bet. I would bet $500 that they couldn't have
Okay.
a competent conversation with you about
Okay.
any of those things.
Right.
Any
Right.
of those things. Because look, their entire everything they read is going to be about colonialism.
Right.
It's going to be about white privilege. It's going to be about like any. They're not going to read anything. They don't grow a broad knowledge base about different things. They study on and focus on one thing, and like anything that goes against that, they're going to be triggered the fuck by, and they're just going to run away from. Yeah. Look, I agree wholeheartedly with you in that there are smart people, and smart people do use their intelligence to basically confirm their various worldviews. I don't think that's what's going on here. I think what's going on here is there's a lot of people that go into college, they realize, oh my God, it's hard. I needed something easy to do. Oh, sociology.
Yeah.
This is fucking easy. So they're not very smart. Anyway.
Okay. Let me read some super chats here. Forking around for 6 months says it would be cool to see you guys cover the actual Justice Warrior versus Piss Boy debate. Maybe. I watched a little bit of it. It was like, man, Peace goes in full aggro mode. Oh man, he was very mad.
Was he
Super
really?
ultra
Oh
mad.
man.
10-11 mad. Okay.
That's great. I saw a clip. Maybe we can watch a clip of Destiny like reviewing it and losing his fucking mind.
I did see
Destiny
that
was
clip.
big mad too.
It's pretty funny. Yeah. So maybe I'll see. I'll watch the rest of it. Offsee for $5 says, real question, do the Asian and Jewish IQ passive stack? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe. We'll have to do some experimentation, right?
What's that? On what?
The Asian and Jewish IQ passive stack.
What does that mean?
Passive is like, like a video game, if you have like a passive, like a passive, like they call like a racial boost if you're playing like World of Warcraft or something.
Oh, okay.
Duke of Savalox for €2 says Sumoi Manitou Torile, which apparently means meet at the market square in Finnish. Well, there you go. Look, we got some Finnish viewers there.
Sweet.
Brian for $5 says, it's been obvious for over 10 years that the left has been openly racist. It's nice to see more and more people finally becoming aware of the fact. Yes, true.
Yeah.
Kaniax122 for $10 says, so I just saw the headline, the witch from the Wicked has been cast to play Jesus Christ in Hollywood Bowl's Jesus Christ Superstar. They are literally making Jesus a black gay woman.
No way, really? Holy shit.
Oh, that's pretty funny. Wow. Okay, well, interesting. I mean, I remember watching Jesus Christ Superstar like a million yonks ago. I was like, it was all right.
Jesus Christ Superstar?
Yeah, it was an all right musical.
It's one of the few musicals that I do like the music to, so.
Wow. What? Look, oh my God.
Buddha, was he where it's sad? Is he where you are? Could Mohammed move a mountain, or was that just PR? I know that whole album.
Wow,
Yeah.
look at that. We found a musical that Adam actually likes.
Did you need to die like that? Oh, my singing is horrible.
Interesting. Well, I'm sure I'll be running out to see Cynthia Erivo as Jesus.
I think I might have seen Jesus Christ Superstar maybe 3 or 4 times in the theater, actually. So
wow.
Usually I go see it if it's playing somewhere. Yeah, but look, gotta tell you, I'm gonna miss the gay lesbian.
Listen, I'm in favor. We need a black gay female. Yeah, black lesbian Jesus is obviously where we're at now. Okay.
A lot of times they make Judas black, which I think, oh, interesting.
That is what he was black in the movie, wasn't he?
I think he was, yeah, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah. But Judas wasn't portrayed as like, if I recall correctly, in the movie, he wasn't portrayed as like just like a bad guy, like a clearly bad guy.
There's there, when I was in school, I got a hold of this book that was the extra canonical sayings of Jesus. That was a bunch of stuff that was edited out of the Bible. And supposedly there's a description of Jesus where he has hair of wine, hair the color of wine, which makes you think, is that red?
Like a dark red purple?
Was he like a ginger?
Yeah.
Because look, there's always a big fight over whether, you know, a lot of people say, look, he grew up in the Middle East, right? He was obviously brown. But I think he might have been an albino or something. So, like, that would stand out, right? You'd be like, oh, that guy is definitely a god. We should follow him.
That would be interesting. How hilarious would that be? He's like, yeah, he was, you know,
super white.
Yeah, he's like, his parents, you know, are some like very brown, you know, Jewish, Middle Eastern looking people. And then they're like, oh, we just had an albino child. And they're like, oh my God.
Well, wouldn't you also say, look, obviously that's not your kid? Like, you'd be like, that kid's from God. God.
Yeah, exactly.
God made that kid. He looks nothing like either of you.
Right.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea.
So, I mean, when you're, don't you have like weird eye colors when you're albino? Like your eyes
you have
are
like
also,
blue eyes. Yeah. Super light.
or they're like super light. I don't know. Interesting. Well, that's a theory. Jesus was an albino. I like it. Noel screaming to the void for $5 says, my parents met at a race riot. Oh my God. On opposite sides.
Well, that's
55
definitely
years ago.
opposites attract.
That's amazing. In East LA, can't understand Noah taking sides as a result of his parents being like mine. That's so funny. That's so funny. Malik for $10 says, Konstantin Kisin talked about this the other day too. Quote, at what point does England cease to be England was the question. I'll try to find the clip. Yeah, I think I saw that clip circulating on the Twitters too. Gavatron for 5 Canadians says, education should be taught from a neutral standpoint. It shouldn't be praised or denigrate historical events.
I agree. Yeah. It's just so difficult to get people to do that.
I half agree. I half disagree. I do think you need to instill patriotism into children for their own country.
Right.
So.
Well, obviously America is so great.
Exactly.
You're naturally going to do that even if you teach neutrally, right?
Right.
America would have to be pretty bad for you to teach neutrally and not instill some form of patriotism, right?
That's true. I guess that's a good point. Brian for $10 says, she says that she isn't promoting segregation, but then gives a definition of what she wants that fits perfectly with separate but equal tagline of segregation. That's what they always, it's just ridiculous what they always do. Joey Hollywood Films for $5 says, fault for my last super chat about Star Trek. DS9 is a great choice, Sitch. The most bingeable Trek for sure. I bounce between DS9, TNG, and TOS myself. There you go. No love for Voyager. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about the CFPB here. Now, first, I want to watch like the first 3 or 4 minutes of this Patrick Boyle video where he kind of gives an example, I think, of a good example of why you need these sorts of protection bureaus and why you need these regulations in the first place.
Yeah, this is a criminal element that a lot of people are ignoring in this debate.
Right. When he describes sort of like this, you know, how people can get very easily scammed.
Yes, yeah.
American traditions. In keeping with this tradition, CNBC reported last week that thousands of Americans have seen their savings vanish with the collapse of a financial tech company called Synapse. The article gives the example of a school teacher who deposited the proceeds of her home sale, so basically her life savings, into an influencer-promoted bank called Yada. She first found herself locked out of that account. This went on for over 6 months, and last week she learned that she would only be getting $500 of her $280,000 back from Yada.
That's fucking terrifying.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yep.
Can you imagine?
Yep.
Look, and I wonder if she was forced to deposit it there because of sometimes there's strange things that go on with home sales, so...
Well, it sounds like
I wonder how the money ended up there.
It sounds like I mean, I don't know if it says specifically, but it sounds like from the article that she watched some influencer, some social media twat, and you know they're always shilling these dumb products, and they,
Right.
they were paid to promote this product, and they were like, oh, okay, I trust my social media influencer when they tell me to put, money into some financial product, and then obviously that goes south.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you read the article?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Ouch. That sucks. People are already going to say, oh, buyer beware. You've deserved it. You shouldn't listen to your fucking influencer. You sucker.
That is 0.18% of her savings that they're returning to her. She is, of course, not the only victim. According to a court-appointed trustee, up to $96 million of customer funds have vanished entirely. At Yotta, which was a fintech, not a bank, despite being promoted as a bank by a number of big YouTubers, almost 14,000 customers report that they're being offered a combined $11.8 million, despite having deposited almost $65 million. It's not clear how this money is being divided up, as some customers, like the school teacher I mentioned earlier, are doing a lot worse than others. Yotta is a particularly strange example of a fintech, where it was originally launched as offering prize-linked savings accounts, which are savings accounts in which the depositor receives a low interest rate, but then has the chance of winning a large amount of money in a sweepstakes. The New York Times described Yotta a year ago as a smart way to turn gambling into a virtue.
Thank you. See, this is what's also scary too. Someone sees some influencer, they're promoting some like fucking schlocky fintech thing, and then they Google it and they're like, oh, look, the New York
Times. Yeah.
The New York Times said that this was like a good thing too, right? I should trust this fucking scammy thing.
Yeah, I go to the FDIC website and look the bank up on there. But look, I'm a smart person. Okay. And I believe we should structure a world that doesn't completely cut dumb people off at the fucking knees, right?
Well, it's not even my attitude on this whole buyer beware situation is, do you want to live in a high trust society or not?
Yes.
Right.
Great point. Great point.
And
yeah.
I think there's like a certain naivete from people that say this. Like, if you don't care about living in a high trust society and you're totally fine, if you want to just go live in a cabin in the woods by yourself, and grow your own food, like, fine, be my guest, right? You buy some land, you go do that, right? No one's gonna stop you. But I think there's some naivete from a lot of people who will constantly say that, we should be living in this high trust society. It's much nicer to live in a high trust society. Everyone's much happier walking around living in a high trust society. If you have this completely just buyer beware attitude, which has existed in other countries, which has existed in many countries throughout, points of history, where there'd be very, very low amounts of, if any amounts of regulatory oversight on anything, then it becomes a low trust society, which, number one, makes everyone in the society miserable, because you essentially only trust your family member and your close friends, right? You look at all strangers as like your whole life becomes the prisoner's dilemma, where you look at everyone around you as like, oh, well, they're going to try to screw me over, so I have to screw them over first, essentially. So not only are you going to be miserable, but then also it's going to make doing actual business so much worse, because everyone's going to be interacting on an economic level with the assumption that everyone's trying to screw them over too.
Yeah.
And it's just so much better. Like, when you look at, people they'll always post these videos of, if you go to like the Apple store in Japan, like, if you go to the Apple store here, they have the devices and there's like that little cord that metal cord
holds
that
them down. Yeah.
holds it to the table, right? And they talk about how in Japan there's no cord there. It's like, yeah, because there's a high trust society where there's not a lot of like
they got
stealing.
us beat as far as high trust society
Exactly.
goes. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And it's like, okay. And people talk about, oh, there's no crime, everything's clean, everything's so nice. It's like if you're going to live in a system or society where you say there's no regulations, it's just all buyer beware, you're not going to live in that high trust society. Okay. It's not going to be, you need kind of like a top down process. I think you're very naive if you think that everyone's going to be walking around thinking everyone's going to scam everyone else on business relations. There's not going to be a lot of crime or anything going on.
Yeah, all the products ending up behind the glass are an example of the erosion of our high trust society right before our eyes. It's so sad. It's so sad. So, Yeah, watch out what you're welcoming.
Right.
Are we going to listen to more of this? We should listen to the clip too in the middle where he calls out the Joe Rogan guy. Can't remember
Mark
his name.
Andreessen?
Yeah,
We could do
Mark
that.
Andreessen.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that. We can jump ahead. So basically, he just explains what this fintech Yoda bank thing was. It wasn't a bank. They said that they did have FDIC insurance, which was a lie.
On their website, but they didn't. Yeah, it was a complete lie. Yeah.
Yeah. And so basically the way this would work is that they would say, hey, you deposit in we have like a low interest savings account, very, very low interest. But the offset of that is you get entered into like a lottery and you can win $10 million, right? Someone's going to win $10 million if you put money in our bank. And then this got revised down to $1 million once it got going. And then that apparently never happened. No one ever won the $1 million. So the whole thing was just a scam in the first place.
Psych, we take all your money.
Right. And then there was another problem because like this Yada Bank was actually set up. So a lot of these, and Patrick talks about this in the video, the way that a lot of these fintechs work to make things cheap is that instead of having like one bank do everything so that it becomes a bank and thus is regulated by the government and has to like follow these regulations, they basically piecemeal every aspect of the financial transactions into different companies. And so they can basically avoid regulations. They can exist in this sort of gray area. And so Yada Bank relied on a company called Synapse to like actually keep track of the money in the banks. And Synapse, and it's unclear why, when I was reading the articles, why this happened, for some reason, either through corruption or just total mismanagement, like they completely lost track of whose money was whose. And there's just like no one has any money anymore because they just can't actually make any determination about, like, a bunch of money disappeared. And then they're like, well, we don't even know, after the people's money disappeared, the remaining money, we don't actually know whose money is whose. So,
they kept track of the transaction data. So obviously you all have bank accounts, the transaction data in your account. That was managed by a different company, which you could see that. I mean, obviously the biggest problem there is going to be a security threat. So you have to have some kind of resources behind you just to fight that constant security threat. Yeah.
Right. Well, no, it's like imagine if, you have your bank account and you have like you look at it, it says this is how much you have an account. And you wake up the next day and it's like question mark. It's like, oh, sorry, the bank doesn't know how much you have in your account anymore. So you can't actually get any of that money. That's your money that's in the account. We just forgot. We forgot who has what. So, eat shit.
Yeah. Who do you call when that happens?
You get fucked, I guess, if it's not a regulated bank.
Well, if you call the bank and the bank can't do anything about it, well, who's your next call? Right? Obviously, you call the bank first. You'd be like, there's some kind of problem here.
Right.
My account balance is wrong.
You call the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Adam.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Yes.
We're going to watch some of the hearing too. And in the hearing, they talk about how the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau came to exist. There was a bunch of like different organizations that were handling the consumer portion. And they basically peeled off all of those different, what would you call them, departments, and then
they consolidated
consolidated them into one agency. So if you get rid of that agency, those departments don't magically go back to the original regulatory body.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the clip where he talks about Mark Andreessen.
Yeah, this is great because everyone loves this clip here. They love it. He did a smart thing by calling out Elizabeth Warren because everybody fucking hates Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah. Yes.
In a recent episode of The Joe Rogan Experience, Mark Andreessen, the co-founder of the VC firm Andreessen Horowitz, took shots at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I'll let the always well-spoken Mark Andreessen explain the issue himself.
So, like, for example, we have this thing called the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, which was it's sort of Elizabeth Warren's personal agency that she gets to control. And it's an independent agency that just gets to run and do whatever it wants.
What does her agency do?
Whatever she wants.
What does it do, though?
Basically, terrorize financial institutions, prevent fintech, prevent new competition, new startups that want to compete with the big banks.
Really?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
How so?
just by terrorizing anybody who tries to do anything new in financial services. And
Can you give me an example?
Well, I guess, debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from, is these agencies. So debanking is when you as either a person or your company are literally kicked out of the banking system.
Like they did to Kanye.
Exactly, like they did to Kanye. My partner Ben's father has been debanked.
Really?
We had an employee who
For what?
For having the wrong politics, for saying unacceptable things. Under current banking regulations, here's a great thing. Under current banking regulations, after all the reforms of the last 20 years, there's now a category called a politically exposed person, PEP. And if you are a PEP, you are required by financial regulators to kick them off of to kick them out of your bank.
What?
You're not allowed to
What
have
if you're politically on the left?
Well, that's fine.
No.
because they're not politically exposed.
So no one on the left gets debanked?
I have not heard of a single instance of anybody on the left getting debanked.
Can you tell me?
Now, we might need to fact check some of what Mark just said. While the CFPB was originally proposed by Elizabeth Warren in 2007, she was removed from consideration as its director by the Obama administration and has never headed it up. Its current director is Rohit Chopra, and I don't know if Mark struggles with face blindness or something like that, but it's not easy to mix the two of them up.
Patrick's great.
He's very funny. It's, and it's funny. This, like, you can tell Mark is dishonest too. If you listen, if you know enough about what he's saying and you listen closely, because he simultaneously says it has no oversight, right? Meaning it has no oversight from Congress, but then it's also somehow controlled by Elizabeth Warren. How does that make sense? She's a senator.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and there's
So
literally an oversight committee that controls it. So.
Well, I know, but like, as I'm saying, like either like that's not one of those things can't be true. I mean, in terms of neither of them are true, but like those both can't be true at the same time.
He's hyperventilating when he says all this stuff, and also like Joe Rogan doesn't really buy what he's saying, and he goes into a little bit of a panic mode.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The more I look at it,
the
more I look at it, the more I just. He seems like he just got caught, right? Like, who's a To Catch a Predator guy? When he comes out with
Chris Hansen.
Chris Hansen, yeah. Chris Hansen walks out and says,
"Right,
look." And I think Patrick Boyle does a little bit of the Chris Hansen here too, as well.
Have you ever seen? That's it's funny now that you think about it. There's this very famous like comedy sketch. I think it's from Derek Comedy. It had Troy from Community in it, where it was about like bro rape. And they had like it was like this comedy thing, talk about things that were acceptable in comedy like 14 years ago, where it was about like frat bros trying to like rape other frat bros. And it's like it was a very famous sketch. I remember back when I was in college. And it's funny because the same thing, you have like the Chris Hansen character would pop up and be like, excuse me. He's like, oh no. And as soon as they show up, the people go in that full like panic, talking a mile a minute, talking over themselves, just, verbal diarrhea that Mark kind of did for that second there. It's like the total same vibe. Yeah.
Yeah. But people are sharing this clip around like it's wisdom. Oh God.
I know. It's crazy.
Because he said Elizabeth Warren.
Yes.
Everyone hates Elizabeth Warren. Look, I hate Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Rohit is a 42-year-old man of Indian descent, and Elizabeth is a 75-year-old woman of...
It says the Washington Post reported that in 1986, Warren identified her race as American Indian on a state bar with of Texas write-in form used for statistical information gathering. So he's doing the Pocahontas joke.
It's not Mark's fault. Okay, he saw that they're both Indian, right? So he thought they were the same person.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
He thought, oh, he's Indian, she's Indian.
Yeah, it's the same. Right?
Well, it doesn't matter. It's hard to mix them up is what I'm really trying to say. Now, the audio seems to be a bit off in this section.
What does it do, though?
Basically, terrorize financial institutions, prevent fintech, prevent new competition, new startups that want to compete with the big banks.
Really?
But I think what Mark is saying, and I may be wrong, is that the CFPB supervises banks, thrifts, and credit unions with assets of over $10 billion, also supervising non-depository mortgage originators and servicers, payday lenders, consumer debt collectors, international money transfer, and private student lenders. It's in place to protect consumers from being ripped off by financial services providers, but it doesn't yet cover fintechs like Yotta and Synapse.
So that's
Mark accuses.
Oh, we're playing the game.
Yeah.
So that's the big banks, over $10 billion. That's like Bank of
Right.
America, Wells Fargo,
Yes.
Chase Bank. Yeah.
Right.
Because I've
Right.
heard people saying, oh, they just do the small banks. Someone in our comments said that they're consumer protection for the small banks that
It's the
nobody
opposite.
banks at. Yeah, it's the total opposite.
It's the total opposite. No, because like there are the smaller banks. The smaller banks, I believe, are often more policed by states.
Okay.
Like each individual state will have some sort of thing that polices them. But this is for the big banks, the big national banks. And also because I don't know if because we're probably gonna jump around the video. So spoiler alert. Guess who invested a shit ton of money into Synapse, that company that lost, people $50 million in the beginning of this video? Oh, Mark Andreessen.
Mark Andreessen,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
So Mark Andreessen, who invested a bunch of money in Synapse, who lost all those people all that money because, they don't give a fuck because some, fly-by-night scam.
Who probably
fintech
paid
scam.
influencers on YouTube to sell the place.
Right, exactly, right. And he's all complaining about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and saying regulation bad. Gee, I wonder why he thinks regulation bad here.
I wonder what YouTubers promoted this bank.
Probably the crypto.
This is look, this is why I'm terrified to even take on any ad space because of this. Yeah, nightmare. Any sponsorships.
Yep.
The CFPB of being involved in debanking, and in particular, debanking conservatives. This is entirely untrue. In fact, they do the opposite. They investigate banks for discriminatory treatment of customers. He goes on to effectively change the subject entirely to discussing politically exposed persons. And while that's outside the scope of this video, I do happen to know a bit about that, as I ran a fund for many years. I'm amazed that Mark runs a multi-billion-dollar fund and doesn't understand these rules. Politically exposed persons are people like politicians, their families, and their close business associates. If a politically exposed person, let's say someone like Hunter Biden, wants to move a large sum of money into a bank or an investment fund, the financial institution accepting those funds is required to investigate the source of those funds, which usually involves asking the customer where the money came from. If they say it came from selling their house or liquidating another investment, you then have to ask them for documents proving this. This can be a bit awkward and embarrassing, as your customer often feels accused of wrongdoing, but most people in this position are used to these procedures, which are in place to prevent politicians from taking bribes or having bribes passed to their family members or business associates on their behalf. If like Elizabeth Warren wanted to invest $1 million in,
we both want to pause at exactly the same time. So, look, so they're trying to weed out the 10% for the big guy clan, right?
Right. But no,
anyway,
we gotta get rid of them. So,
what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say the same thing, but
okay.
Right. I just want to jump ahead for a little bit, and then we'll move to a different video. Just want to show this part where he talks about.
Going to take Mark at his word that he wants to have the CFPB shut down because of this debanking issue that he possibly misunderstands. But Mark unfortunately missed this press release on the CFPB website that came out about a week before his Joe Rogan interview about how they're going to crack down on illegal debanking, which I'm sure he would have been delighted about.
So we literally have all the people, because Mark Andreessen's fat egghead lies on Joe Rogan, all these people eat up this propaganda, I guess, and they just repeat this debanking lie completely, even though it's the exact opposite. He fucking lied to you. He fooled you. He fooled the people. He knew just how to word it. He's like, listen, how do I get the right-wing populist to be on my side. The populists who hate the big banks, who hate the tech industry, who hate all that shit, right? How do I get them to support me, the person who donated a bunch of money to Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden's, campaign? Oh, I know. Let me throw out Elizabeth Warren's name, like as red meat to get everyone interested. And then let me just lie about this whole, oh, well, I'm fighting to stop debanking conservatives when the CFPB is the actual organization that's trying to stop people from getting debanked for political reasons.
The phrase that comes to mind is it's easier to fool a person than to convince him that they've been fooled.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
So unfortunate, but true. Yeah.
Oh, and there's another bit in there about how they plan to supervise the largest fintech companies. Now, maybe Mark's firm doesn't invest in fintech firms, and he didn't hear about this new development a week before he was on Joe Rogan's podcast.
1 week.
Let's take a look at his website. Oh, look at that. Synapse, that's a fintech, isn't it? And there's loads of fintechs and crypto stuff on the list. You know, the kind of stuff that American consumers might need to be protected from. They should probably remove Synapse from their list of investments, though, because it did go bankrupt. How would Mark not know about these investments? It's frankly, it's all over his website. Does he not listen when he's sitting in the meetings? Here's a blog post on his company website from 2021 about fintech cozying up to the creator economy. Oh, look, a video link. Oh, come on, Mark. The YouTubers know how to cover their tracks, and you're leaving everything up on your website.
So that's funny. So that's a YouTuber that apparently some YouTuber, I'm not familiar with him, Graham Stephan, who promoted this Yada shit. And they were smart enough to be like,
get rid of this video. Yeah.
I'm going to get rid of this video where I promote this thing.
God, he just destroys him. He completely eviscerates this guy. It's hilarious.
Wow, I've never heard this guy. This guy's got almost 5 million subscribers.
Really? Yeah. Patrick Boyle?
No, Graham Stephan.
Oh, okay. Well, that's where you want to go. Oh, those poor suckers.
Yeah.
Oh, those poor suckers.
Yep.
Oh, so
he does
sad.
He does all those like how to get rich videos.
Oh, really? Oh, man. Oh.
Right. Though he also has a video said, "I'm going out of business." What happened? So I don't know. Maybe that. Who knows?
Graham Stephan is his name. I wonder if I've watched any of his videos.
I haven't seen it. But yeah. Okay. Anyway, we can move to a different video here. So, but yeah, no, Patrick, I think does a very good job. Just totally annihilating.
I don't think Patrick is anti-crypto though.
We're joined now by
So this is interesting. So on Breaking Points, they had a guy who's a self-identified right-wing populist. I believe that's what he says he is. And he kind of goes over but he's like a big defender of CFPB. So
Rohit Chopra, who was President Biden's now Bureau, or CFPB, not a friendly acronym. I tell the story of Rohit Chopra, who was President Biden's now ousted or outgoing director of the CFPB. He did.
So I thought Unheard was like a pretty left-wing organization. Am I wrong about that?
Unheard, I think it is.
Okay. No, maybe I misheard him when he said that. But anyway.
Some numerous reforms that I think were pro-Main Street, helping ordinary Americans who have very little bargaining power against banks, and now big tech companies that increasingly act like financial institutions. One of the things that he proposed just in his...
If Republicans do a bait and switch, if they get elected on right-wing populism, and then completely throw everyone to the wolves of corporate America, oh my God, that's going to be so painful.
I mean,
that's going to be the giant betrayal of all time.
I think there's a very, very high likelihood of that occurring. I mean, that's what kind of looks like the direction we're going. It's like we're going to cut a bunch of things. Oh, but we're also going to get rid of like the cops on the beat who are going to protect you and the regulations, against the businesses. It's going to be. It does look to me like a bait and switch. Right-wing populism. Just kidding. We're back to Bush era neoliberal, economic policies all over again.
Yeah, it is an they have an ideological bent that any regulation is kind of the corporate equivalent of stop and frisk, right? They're
Right.
they're like, well, you don't need to stop and frisk us. We're not doing anything wrong. Well, until you're not doing anything wrong. And I mean, you have to know the details of the situation, right? Obviously, stop and frisk is a terrible policy if you're hassling tens of thousands of people and catching like one crook, right? But like if you're doing stop and frisk and you're catching like hundreds of crooks all the time, right? If your
Right.
batting average is pretty high, then maybe the program is working. And I don't know the inner workings of these institutions enough to say if it's prudent to trim back budget or we should be doubling their budget, right? And all the people I'm arguing with about this don't know either.
Right.
Like they just come up with some gobbledygook about fucking government bad.
Well, it's the reason that I'm skeptical of the claims is there is a truth claim here, which is that obviously there are industries that have too burdensome regulations,
Yes,
which can be
totally
lobbied by the big businesses in order to keep out competitors, right?
Wow. Okay.
Okay,
Yes,
so
that's
that
a
can
that's an
right,
aspect of it is too.
right. So that can obviously happen, but then it's weird because it's like, okay, but then there's a bait and switch because like, well, then you would expect the big banks and things to be against getting rid of these regulations. And then if they're going hand in hand with Mark Andreessen about getting rid of the regulations, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's a sign that something that should be a sign that something's a little sketch. And also it's even weirder because the CFPB was only for organizations that had over $10 billion. So which to me seems like, I mean, are we calling the little banks $10 billion? I don't know. I don't know enough about banking to know if that's a little thing. That to me seems like it's only the big banks here. So it seems kind of like this bait and switch attitude. And then on top of that, it's like getting rid of the CFPB, it doesn't change the law, it doesn't change the regulation. Because if it's true, and my understanding is it is true when I looked up myself, there was this claim that like after the financial crash in 2008, they passed a bunch of regulations, and a lot of the regulations were so strenuous or so burdensome that basically I think like only like 2 or 3 new banks have even like come into creation, since 2008, right? And so obviously that to me would be a sign of probably a market that is too regulated. If you can't have any new banks form, you want to have healthy competition. And so it's something that does need to figure out, okay, what are the regulations that are good? What are the regulations that are overburdensome? Can we scale those back in some way, right? And to me, that would be the way to actually handle the situation. And you'd have to do that through Congress, because Congress is the people that controls the regulation. You have to have someone try to figure out, okay, what regulation can we get rid of that makes so competition can start, but also not everyone getting fleeced by fucking crypto rug pulls when they invest in the bank, when they put their fucking money in a savings account, right? That's what we want. And instead of doing that, they're like, no, let's just get rid of the police, but not change the law. And it's like, well, wait a minute. It doesn't actually solve the problem that you're talking about. That just means there's not going to be any enforcement. Like you're still not going to have small businesses. Like no small business, no small bank is going to say, well, we might not have police for 4 years. So I'm going to try to like create my business in 4 years and hope, like that the next president comes into power, doesn't just bring back the police and my entire business model becomes illegal, right? That's not a thing. That's a super fucking risky maneuver. I don't think that's going to create a bunch of new competition and startup in the markets. If you get rid of the police without changing the law, all it's going to do is it's going to allow the pre-existing actors to essentially just go unchecked and do a bunch of scummy shit.
Yeah, which you hope they don't. A lot of people just think business won't do that kind of stuff, but obviously they do. They totally do shady shit.
Of course they do.
So Chase has $4 trillion in assets. So
wow,
quite a bit bigger than.
Well,
I was going to say, like some hedge funds have $10 billion, and they're not even a bank. They're just fucking private investors pooling money together.
Right.
So the Chase Bank with $4 trillion in assets no longer regulated.
Well, they're regulated by a different, I think. Oh, you're saying now? Yeah. Now, yes. Right.
There's different banks have different businesses. Obviously, there's their investment side, right?
Right.
And there's their commercial side. This was what people were bitching about when the housing market collapsed, right? They wanted more protection. They wanted banks. A lot of people on the left said banks should just go back to being bankers and stop doing all this risky investment strategies and whatnot. They're kind of forced to, because, and this is why Silicon Valley Bank went bad, because they made risky, well, they actually weren't risky investments. They were super safe investments. They invested in like long-term treasuries, but as soon as interest rates went down, those long-term treasuries became less valuable. So all of a sudden they're underwater in all these treasuries. So it's a question of who is going to regulate that commercial portion of the bank now? Because obviously, you know, all Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they all have huge consumer products divisions, right? They're always trying to come up with a new consumer product, right? Oh, look, we can charge you for overdrafts and charge you $40, right?
Right.
That's like a big product for them. They're like, oh, people are dipshits. They pay their bills late. Let's make the date that they pay their bill really tiny, and then let's charge them $40 when they don't pay it on time.
Right. It was the CFPB that made it so that they capped late fees.
Yeah.
And they capped overdraft fees. There used to be a thing. I don't know if it still goes on anymore, because I mean, I don't even remember the last time I used a fucking check. But there used to be this like really fucked up system that a lot of banks, if you were overdrafting checks, they wouldn't tell you.
Yeah, you get charged like $120. It'd be like, bam.
Right. And so then there'd be this crazy situation where someone doesn't realize that they're overdrafting checks. And then when they look at their statement at the end of the month, it's like, oh, not only do you owe the extra money that you overdrafted, but then each check gets some like insane fee slapped on them. Right.
Yeah.
And I know that they clamp down on that too, to say, no, you have the ability. If someone doesn't have money in their checking account, okay, you have the ability to stop the payment or to tell them. Like, it's like if your credit card gets declined. It was a decision to say, no, we're going to let you keep overdrafting, and then so that we can just suck fees out of you, essentially.
Yeah, that's what they get out of most of the consumer stuff.
Right.
Final days in office was a rule against debanking. This is basically that your financial institution can drop you as a customer based on your views, or what you use your account to fundraise for, or what you've said online. And this was remarkable because it was kind of politically conciliatory. It's not just good policy, but in a way you have here someone from the progressive wing of the Democratic Party taking on a practice that mostly has been used against right-wing activists, like PayPal debanked an evangelical fundraising site that was raising money for January 6th defendants. Canadian truckers who protested the COVID mandates were debanked at the behest of the Canadian government. In Britain, Nigel Farage faced debanking for a while from his financial institution, which is called Coots. Anyway, it was something that the right was exercised about, and he just with a very swift rule that says, customers cannot be dropped based on their exercise of free speech, would have put a stop to it. Now, that's not the only thing the CFPB did. It did lots of good things, but Musk had said that the CFPB must die, and sure enough, he did it. Not just Musk, by the way. Mark Zuckerberg also went on Joe Rogan's show complaining about why he's getting oversight from the CFPB. Well, it's because they track their Facebook users' financial transactions and stuff. They surveil people, and so they're acting more and more like a financial institution. As Chopra himself told me, it's not that we are encroaching into big tech. It's that big tech is encroaching into the financial system.
Yeah, and Mark Andreessen too went on Rogan to complain about CFPB, talk about how it was debanking people, and the debanking, I think, point is a great entry into your piece and to the whole conversation, because privately, Andreessen and the others, I don't think actually would be satisfied by what Chopra did at CFPB with his debanking rule, because it said you cannot debank people for ideological reasons. But of course, you can still debank people for being drug traffickers, or for working with cartels, working with sanctioned organizations. Like there's it's called Know Your Customer, and it's one of the things that some elements of Silicon Valley have been so hostile to, this idea that you have as a financial institution some responsibility to know who your customer is and whether or not they are just, whether you're dealing with El Chapo. They hate that. They think that that's an encroachment on their freedom to do Bitcoin commerce or whatever. And so when Andreessen talks about them having so many founders who were debanked, he's doing this kind of two-step where he's trying to make Rogan's audience think that these Silicon Valley tech founders were debanked because they supported Trump or because they said something critical of like George Floyd or Black Lives Matter or something. When in fact, if you look at each case, it's like, oh, like they were, they were moving crypto for a cartel. And so the bank was like, we're freezing this. And so for Chopra to come in and deal with.
So, I mean, I'm usually not a Ryan Grimm fan, but I do give him a lot of credit for this because he completely nailed exactly what Mark Andreessen was doing with that sort of two-step maneuver there, where it's like, make everyone think that I'm talking about, oh, I'm protecting you politically. I'm talking about politics. And then it's like, no, actually, all the people that you're defending, including yourself, nothing to do with politics whatsoever. It was all like scummy financial transactions that most people would agree. Yeah, you shouldn't be. I mean, that's the whole, what was the big thing that Trump ran on was, we have to stop the drug cartels, right? I saw all these people, and Trump is doing something which I heavily applaud today, which I've always wondered why the fuck they're not doing this. We've talked about this on the show where, they're using like military drones and things to spy on the cartels and, trying to use, label them as terrorists and then try so that you can use military operations against them, which I think is fantastic, right?
Did you just say you applaud Trump?
I 100% applaud Trump doing that. I don't know why the fuck. I've even talked about this on stream in the past. I don't know why the fuck we haven't always been doing this. I don't know what's going on. If there's some reason for it, I haven't heard anyone explain it to me in a way that makes sense. But so I'm like, that's great. But you can't simultaneously be like, oh, yeah, we should go after the cartels. We should stop the drug trafficking and the human trafficking and all this stuff. But we should totally allow American banks to just suck up, their money and do financial transactions and basically power their operations. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I know some people obviously disagree with that, but
I don't think they disagree with that. They just will just change it to believing the whole, well, they're politically debanking people, even though I have yet to see a single person produce any receipts that the CFPB had anything to do with any person being politically debanked at all.
Well, some people they're hugely in favor of privacy no matter what. So they don't really want the bank looking into anything. So just, they disagree with the idea that just the whole concept of know your customer. So, and I think a lot of people turn to crypto because of that.
Right.
They're basically, even though it's weird because crypto is completely transparent. I guess you can trace any sort of transactions. You don't necessarily know who is behind the wallet though. And there's a technical challenge that only few people can do. So
yeah, I don't know. It's weird because
different.
I don't know enough about the chain crypto technology because you're right. I've heard a lot of people say, the benefit of the blockchain is that everything can be transparent, everything can be traced, but then all these people are using it because it's not traceable. So I don't really understand what's going on there. Maybe I don't understand the technology, but
I was trying to figure out why Melania Trump was debanked because people keep making that claim. And I guess she had some charity that wasn't properly registered or something like that.
Well, I don't know why she was a bank, but that has nothing to do with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They do not go around telling banks to debank people. So
yes, of course not.
Like it's just ridiculous,
especially over their political views. That's a big no-no. Yeah,
right.
The actual problem that people had is interesting because it shows that he's kind of responsive to the genuine public concern. But the public concern is not the actual oligarch concern. They're just kind of using that. So I guess answer the charge that you've gotten online of, and I get this too, on the left or on the right, of naivete. That what did you expect? It's a bunch of oligarchs who got Trump into office. Did you actually believe they were going to do this.
Yeah. So I get very irritated by that because I wrote a number of pieces in the lead up to the election as someone on the populist wing of the right or the pro-worker conservative. We have different names for people like me. Conservative social democrat. I'm very concerned about Elon's influence. I wrote a piece for the New Statesman before the election where the headline was Trump will have to choose populism or Elon Musk. So it's not, I always saw that. And I know the administration is torn between these competing impulses. But what I will say is like the degree to which Elon has been empowered, Elon and that kind of coterie of the so-called techno-libertarian right, it is a little bit disturbing, especially what I see as self-dealing, right? So Elon wants to create an app out of X that is not just a social media company, but a kind of everything app like they have in China with WeChat. So it's your payment system. It can do all sorts of things. And CFPB would have brought scrutiny to bear on what he was doing on the financial side of it. And he says, kill it, and it is done. That's very disturbing. Another one, which I mentioned in the piece, is what's happening in the National Labor Relations Board. So President Trump came in and he...
Okay, well, they're going to move on to something outside the CFPB for a second. But
don't whisper. You're on a show.
I'm looking up... I can't... I find the claim. So Melania Trump she said in her book, essentially, that
she was debanked.
She was debanked, but she didn't say what bank it was. And so there is some, Comer's like put out some investigation to try to investigate why that happened, which I'm in favor of. But
I was curious if it was related to the crypto, but it seemed to have happened long before the crypto stuff. So
no, it was, but yes, before she opened her crypto.
Right.
So
look, we should say, look, I do think people are debanked. I think obviously there are tons of people who have been debanked. Their PayPal accounts have been closed, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So, supposedly CFPB is against that though by policy.
Well, it's not supposedly, they are against it both by policy and statement and action.
Right. So, yeah. Okay. So that's what we're saying.
I mean,
so if people are doing it, they're doing it illegally and against the CFPB's wishes, right? So to blame the CFPB for politically motivated debanking because Elizabeth Warren told them to do it is wacko conspiracy theory.
There's this
nonsense.
Weird thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I wasn't really looking at chat, so I don't know if this was going on, but there's this weird thing that happens where someone will make an accusation and you say, well, that person you're accusing is innocent. And then the accuser says, oh, so you're saying this crime didn't happen? And I'm like, I know the crime didn't happen. I just said the person you're accusing is innocent, right? We've obviously talked about debanking on the show in the past throughout the years. As I said, I'll say it a billion fucking times. I'm against debanking for any political reason whatsoever. I don't think Nick Fuentes should have been debanked. Or I know the Proud Boys are also debanked probably for political reasons.
Or Melania Trump shouldn't be debanked, or Barron Trump shouldn't be debanked. No one should be debanked.
Yeah. I'm completely against this. And if you're against debanking, guess what? You should support the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was trying to actually investigate debanking claims before they got shut down.
Correct.
They were going to be the actual investigative unit that was going to look into this and go after the banks for doing this action. And they just because some, crypto fintech millionaire, billionaire, California asshole, no offense, Adam, like Mark Andreessen.
We got a lot of them here.
Right. Some Tech Valley Californian asshole tricked a bunch of people on Joe Rogan to basically get rid of the police on the beat for him. Also getting rid of the police that were going to investigate debanking.
Yeah.
So.
Egghead stutter boy.
Yes. Okay, there's one 2-minute clip from The Hill on watch. I'm gonna watch a couple clips from the Senate hearing.
Okay.
Kind of interesting.
Which Tim Scott is the chairman of.
Which Tim?
We're fucking doomed.
You were this huge Tim Scott fan, weren't you? What happened?
No, I thought Trump would pick Tim Scott for VP. Didn't happen.
You weren't a fan. You were just saying he's going to win the race.
I was going to say Trump is going to play the race card, but Trump didn't play the race card. So kind of glad he didn't, since Tim Scott, I don't know, he doesn't seem so bright now that he's talking about financial shit.
Right.
One of the cases that it has been most to the fore in recently was the Wells Fargo case of malfeasance, where 16 million accounts were subject to illegal practices, basically being nickel and dimed, having fake charges applied to them and things like that. I looked up before this segment the most recent enforcement actions that the CFPB had taken, so I couldn't be just accused of cherry picking something like the Wells Fargo thing. So the last four were Wise PLC, a British-based provider of remittance services and prepaid cards. It had advertised incorrect fees regarding ATM charges and was fined. Equifax, the credit reporting company, failing to investigate disputed charges, including when people said their credit was being hit by identity fraud, by other people making charges or posting charges on their behalf, fined about $15 million. Honda Finance, telling people that they could defer payments, and when those payments were deferred, reporting those accounts as negligent and hitting their credit card.
Oh my God. Every time you talk to a bank customer service person on the phone, you can't trust anything they say.
Yeah.
I could totally picture them going, oh yeah, you don't have to pay that bill just so you get hit with charges.
You know how like
scammers.
You know how when you call the bank and they're like, this call might be recorded for customer service. You got to record it on your end.
Yeah.
Okay. You got to be like, I'm recording you.
Yeah, totally. So sad. Look, these people get hit with identity theft and Equifax is like, not my problem. You're the one that puts together the fucking credit rating.
I know.
You monsters.
I know.
They should be all over Equifax. They're fucking organized crime.
Really?
Or the credit rating.
Yeah, look, I hate those people.
Mm.
Sitch is like, I love them.
I don't know anything about I don't know anything about Equifax, so I have no take on them.
I should say. And then Block, which is the owner of Cash App, inefficient scrutiny of fraud, and when people reported fraud, there were no telephone customer service representatives to report it to. They were fined a large sum of money, $130 million. These are...
Okay, so this is a bank that when someone reports fraud, they have nobody on customer service to actually answer your call about the fraud.
Right.
They have zero fraud protection at their bank.
Right. It's like when you have some problem with YouTube or Twitter and you're trying to talk to a person and you just keep getting the bots and it like drives you crazy.
Yeah.
Imagine that, but it's like someone's stealing your money from your account. You're like, I need to talk to a person.
That's the thing. It just like the fraud and scams for financial stuff is through the roof now. I can't believe people are talking about getting rid of cops on the beat for this shit.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
There are actions that are taken to protect ordinary people against predatory practices on the part of the financial industry. And that is an important role to play, and the CFPB is to the fore in playing that role.
So here's something I think that Trump should do, besides obviously bringing back the CFPB and actually doubling their funding, or doubling. Well, I'll talk about the whole funding issue in a second, but they should be given more money, more personnel. If Trump wanted to be really popular, here's what he should do. Okay. You know how he's like throwing around these like tariffs at countries to get them to do what he wants. And this is part of why I think it was bad to just cut off all the US aid without actually. I think that like the tariffs, the US aid should be used as like a bargaining chip to force an action. So for example, there's all these, you have India, right? You have India and like I think it's like Sierra Leone or one of these African countries are like where a huge percentage of the phone and text and email scams come from.
Oh yeah, they should just cut them off completely.
Right. Like how much of talk about, Trump's usually pretty good at this. Talk about free money on the table. Okay. If Trump comes out and says, listen, we're going to stop the scammers. We're going to stop the scam phone calls. We're going to stop the scam emails where some person, halfway around the world is trying to steal your fucking money, steal your account, steal your mom's money, steal your mom's account, sending a text message like, oh, you ordered something from Amazon for $200. Click this link if you didn't do it. All that bullshit, right? Oh, your child was in a car accident. They need you to wire a bunch of money. Like all this shit. And it's crazy. I didn't realize this until I saw a bunch of videos about it, but like, there's entire criminal organizations in India and some of these countries in Africa that are set up to scam Americans and other countries out of their money. And the government, they're so large that obviously the government knows that it's going on and that they'll do some kind of bullshit. Like when there'll be some heat on like the country and they'll do some kind of like bullshit crackdown on it. But it's so corrupt that they'll just basically let everyone out the next day.
That's their tax base in that country. That's the problem.
There you go. There you go. But see, that's the free money on the table for Trump to grab and say, okay, fuck you, India, fuck you, other country. You're not getting any aid from America, or we're gonna start throwing tariffs at you until you stop the scammers.
Yeah.
Right? People in America are tired of being fucking scammed with your bullshit.
Yeah, we need to stop those scammers. We do. I mean, I'm in favor of just like nuking them.
They're in the thing is crazy. Like these operations, they're not like in some evil hideout somewhere. They're just like in an office building where there's a bunch of other offices doing normal office stuff. And then on one floor, it's like the scam floor where like the fucking phone callers, the phone banks are.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast on this and it was so fascinating. A lot of those people are actually slaves. Like they don't let them leave at all.
Yes.
Like they're forced to scam people. Oh, it's so disgusting.
Well, it was crazy because like, they have like the scam, like the people that are doing the scamming are themselves caught up in a scam where like, because it's like a mafia-esque system where usually the person who's individually scamming, you or trying to scam you out of your money, they make some like teeny tiny amount of money if they are even successful from scamming you. It all goes to like their boss into some sort of like mafia patronage system.
Yeah. I think they're abducted. Like they find them in some third world country and give some promise of a job in some other country. So they take them up on it and then they roll them into these places where they just work in this scam network and they can't let them, they don't let them leave or talk to their family or anything. Yeah.
Right. I mean, there are a lot of people that are doing it willingly though, too. So I think,
I think there are some. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen YouTube channels where they out those people. So
yeah, those are great. Those are great channels.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if you want to watch this part. So this is in the beginning. Tim Scott's talking about the Silicon Valley Bank failure. I don't know if you have something to say about
this completely triggered me because
okay.
This guy, what is this committee? Because he has no fucking idea how banking works. When I'm just some dude on the internet and I know how banking works better than the fucking chairman of whatever this committee is.
I assume it's
we got a problem. We got a fucking problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I mean,
so there's there's got to be bad
banking specifically.
There's got to be bad information out there because I've seen people crop up with it in the comments and I'm like, so like everyone knows why Silicon Valley Bank happened. Like they made, which like I said, weren't risky investments. They bought like 30-year treasury bills, right? But since they locked up at a lower interest rate, I think, like 2%, 3%, that money's locked up for 30 years. As soon as interest rates go up to 4 or 5%, they're losing money on that investment, right? They've got a bunch of money locked up. And there's two things you can do. You can sell those treasury bills at a loss and try to get some other investment going, or just hope like interest rates are going to go down and that investment's going to come back, right? It's like when your house is underwater.
They're not write it out money. They're losing potential money. They're not losing the actual money.
Yes. So, but what happened was this got out. Word got out on this and everyone lost their fucking minds and went to take their money out of the bank, which is a classic bank run, right? When they have a lot of their assets locked up in 30-year securities. So they can't just, like, they're literally forced to sell those securities at a loss to pay the people who are withdrawing their money from the bank, right?
Right.
So it's just like it's the banker's going to go under. There's no reason for this to happen. No reason whatsoever. Everyone's like, moral hazard. Oh my God. They made a fucking mistake.
Right.
Look, and this isn't the kind of mistake where a city, look, the mistake that took place in Pacific Palisades, where the whole fucking city burned down, is a far bigger mistake than this. These are numbers on fucking paper somewhere, right?
Well, and also, I mean, I guess the issue is it wasn't like it was a mistake, obviously, and it was wrong and stupid, probably, but it wasn't like the housing crash where like there was a lot of risky behavior going on.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, people they knew or they should have known there was a risky behavior in what they were doing.
They made a mistake on interest rate risk, obviously.
Right.
Gary Economics is a good channel if you guys want to check it out. I just read his book recently, and he was a trader he was an interest rate trader. So obviously he understood interest rates and rightly predicted that interest rates were going to stay low for a long period of time, and ended up making billions of dollars for the bank. I can't remember what bank he was working for, but yeah. So look, there's specific people that keep track of interest rates and they bet on where interest rates are going to go. That's part of their risk management. And Silicon Valley had a bad risk management person that bet interest rates were going to stay low forever, even though they went up. So they made a wrong bet. But why do a bunch of people who weren't involved in that decision have to lose their life savings or their company savings over that mistake? Bullshit. Yeah. God, people are so bloodthirsty. Makes me sick.
And can manage the risks. Yet you have admitted that the threshold has been a little higher for banks engaging in crypto activities. Last week, I held a hearing on debanking and once again heard that federal banking agencies, in particular the Fed, use reputational risk as a tool to encourage the debanking of certain legal industries and law-abiding citizens for political reasons not tied to safety and soundness. Debanking is a top priority for this committee, and it certainly is for me, and one that I believe is a bipartisan issue. Will you commit to working with this committee to end debanking, including working with the new Vice Chair of Supervision, once appointed, to revise the Federal Reserve supervision manuals to remove reputational risk as a tool to weigh in on political topics?
I'm happy to make that commitment.
Thank you, sir.
You know this guy, Jerome Powell?
Yeah. That's Jerome Powell.
Of the Federal Reserve.
I don't know.
Accountability is very.
I don't know if it's in this time code here, but he says at some point in this hearing that they're actually, and I'd actually be curious. I see if I can find the original language on the reputational risk, because he makes it sound like when they had this reputational risk thing, that it was really about people doing criminal activity, and somehow the banks were warping this, or some banks were warping this into some sort of like political debanking thing. And so he says that they're actually, because of that, removed the entire category from, the standards going forward. The Fed
Interesting.
Yeah.
To avoid the debanking.
Right, because
so they're basically talking about debanking people who are literally committing crimes, and the regulators are twisting that into, they said something nasty on Twitter about trans people.
Well, that's what he makes it. That's why I said I have to go find the actual language to see, but he makes it sound like that. So I don't know the answer to the question.
We should watch a debate between David Sachs and Vivek Ramaswamy on the Silicon Valley Bank thing, because David Sachs, huge fucking Trump fluffer,
right?
Like Trump's chief guy, I think he's his AI and crypto czar,
right?
Has my exact position on Silicon Valley Bank, the one that I'm articulating right here, right now. Right. Yes. And he basically just mops the floor with Vivek Ramaswamy on like, why do people have to suffer for this? It's ridiculous.
Very important. I would like to think accountability is a priority for everyone, especially the Fed, given that failures in Fed supervision can result in the loss of billions Yet following the failure of Silicon Valley Bank, which was in part due to the failures of its regulators to identify egregious mismanagement of interest rate and liquidity risks, we have yet to see any regulators be held accountable. And as you recall, that was a point of my frustration as a guy who spent a lot of time in the private sector.
Now, he's basically saying here that the regulator should come in and tell you how you invest your money, right? I mean, that's basically what he just said there. Does that seem fucking right to you? The regulator comes in and says, look, you can't invest in this 30-year treasury bill. We might raise interest rates.
Right. Which, yeah, I agree. That doesn't, this is why I heard this. I was like, what are you talking about? First of all, I was super confused because at the same time that he's advocating and cheering on CFPB, a regulator,
the destruction of a regulator.
Getting shut down. He's complaining that a different regulator, the Fed, didn't properly regulate the SVB bank. And I'm like, what? What the fuck are you talking about? What is happening here?
Can you imagine the Fed going into every single financial institution and looking at their investment portfolio and fucking micromanaging it? Like, what the fuck do you even have banks for at that point?
Right.
This is so inept. Such a stupid fucking question. I lost so much respect for Tim and Scott. And it's crazy he's on the banking committee. How do you not know that?
Well, it seems like, I don't know if it's a question of not knowing. It seems like to me it's just a question of, like, he's just taking whatever the partisan side is. So the partisan side is like CFPB bad because Elizabeth Warren bad. So he's like, okay, those regulators are bad. But then it's like SVB Bank. It's like, oh, well, Silicon Valley, that's like supposed to be left wing, even though Mark Andreessen is that. For some reason, he gets passed, but whatever. They're left-ish, supposedly, so they bad. So I'm against them. Fed bad, so I'm against them. So somehow, like, whatever side is the bad side politically, he's just going to be against, even if it completely contradicts itself.
Pretty sure Jerome Powell spells it out how Silicon Valley Bank went under.
He does, but he uses, like, highfalutin bank terms. So you're like, what?
I can dumb it down.
Right.
10 years running a few businesses, I can tell you that accountability is a necessary part of making the entire organization healthier and perform its job as well as possible. I'm encouraged that the FDIC has begun the process of holding SVB executives accountable. That's good news. But no Fed employee has been fired, put on probation, put on performance improvement plans.
See, he's basically saying you need to fire your regulators because they didn't micromanage this bank. What the fuck? This is so retarded.
Well, first of all, it's retarded for two reasons. Number one, it's retarded. Again, it's completely hypocritical. You can't be in favor of cutting regulations and then say, why do you not enforce regulations? You should be fired.
Well, there is no, look, this is a job of the bank to manage their investments. You don't go in and micromanage their investments. That's not even a regulatory thing.
Well, but then the second thing is, unless they did something, unless they're like, he's not even specifying, was there a regulation? There has to be some regulation in place that they violated. That you would say, okay, well, why didn't the Fed step in here if they're regulating some aspect of some regulation, right? Which he never brings forward. And my understanding is from what you're saying with the SVB Bank that they didn't violate the law or do anything. They didn't trip up any regulations. They just made a bad financial decision.
And only a bad financial decision in light of the fact that they had a bunch of their bank depositors show up and want their money. They had a classic bank run. Yeah, exactly. So, like, if it hadn't gone out that they were underwater in these treasuries, like the bank run never would have happened. People be none the wiser. They would have just wrote it out.
Right.
So dumb.
Plan, all of which would.
Is a regulator supposed to stop the bank run? Is supposed to stop the rumor mill going about how the bank has bad investments and that everyone should pull their money? What? This is the whole purpose of the FDIC, to avoid bank runs, because they can step in and say, no, your money's safe. Look, you got insurance. You don't need to take your money out.
Would be expected in the private sector, as I just mentioned, for employee failure. Please explain to me why Fed employees are held to a different standard from my perspective than everyone else, and what are you planning to do to take accountability for Fed failures in supervision?
I wish we had a camera on all the eye rolls that Jay Powell must be doing right now, because he's like, oh my God, this fucking idiot. This idiot again.
Jerome Powell, I don't really have like any feelings towards him one way or the other, but he's very courteous in all the interactions with everyone. So
he's in a fight with Trump, though. Trump wants those interest rates down, and Jerome is like, no. But look, Sitch, if they fire half the fucking government and unemployment creeps up to like 5-6%, Jerome Powell's going to be forced to lower interest rates because they have the dual mandate. They got to keep unemployment and inflation low. So
there you go. That's a 10D chess move. I'll just fire enough people to increase unemployment to make you drop interest rates.
I don't know that it's a 10D chess move, but higher unemployment would help inflation too, because no one will have any money for things. They'll have to lower prices. Yeah.
Right.
So we've actually done quite a lot in response to the events associated with Silicon Valley Bank. So we've done many things. In terms of specific accountability, what we found was this was not a case of malfeasance or nonfeasance so much. It was a case of people were carrying out a specific playbook that failed to cause us to act in time for these things. So it wasn't actually particularly fair to the employees to say you violated our practices in some way. That wasn't really what happened. What happened was, I would say, a lot of focus on process and on governance and controls, and not enough focus on basic bread and butter banking, credit risk, liquidity risk, interest rate risk, things like that. So, as we discussed yesterday, we took very substantial steps to avoid further spread of those issues, and that was successful. But I understand your point on accountability.
This is one of the areas where you see the approach of looking at safety and soundness, and with the.
So he basically just said what you just said.
He said they didn't focus on the interest rate risk. Jerome Powell knows that. He's like, well, I kind of fucked him when I raised interest rates. Like they raise interest rates by fiat, basically. A bunch of bankers sit around and they look at the economy and they think, oh man, the economy's getting too hot. Inflation is out of control. We need to slow things down. We need to stop people taking out loans because that increases the money supply. So if we raise interest rates, that will disincentivize people from doing that. So they say, let's raise interest rates. When they raised interest rates, they put Silicon Valley Bank's long-term investments underwater.
Right.
So he fucking did it. There's a causal correlation.
Right. But obviously they can't be like, oh, well, because this one bank did this, we can't raise interest rates for everyone, right? Like, that
of course not. Yeah. Of course not. Right. They have to look at the overall economy. But it is interesting. It is fascinating, because if we maintained a low interest rate environment, they wouldn't have had any problem at all. And
of course.
Yeah. So look, a lot of people want to go back to that low interest rate environment. I think, I mean, I'm basically one of them. I think if they just lowered interest rates, it would help inflation, not hurt inflation.
Right.
But people disagree with me. Obviously, we won't know until they actually do it. We'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Number of MRAs that, when really documented but no action was taken, that leads me to the conclusion that individual employees, supervisors, should have been held account for that. I'll move on, though.
It's like, this thing fucking happened.
I know.
Someone's responsible. I want blood.
It's really weird. It is weird that I don't know why he's bringing it up here, except I guess because he just wants to hit the Fed and blame them somehow for this. But
well, yeah, he wants accountability. Yeah, it looks good optically.
Right. Well, he wants a talking point to say, in private business, we hold people accountable, but the Fed, that private government, private / government quasi institution, they don't hold people accountable.
He's fighting the last war. The last war was the housing collapse, where none of the bankers were held responsible. So he wants to be able to march out and say, look, we held some bankers responsible.
Listen,
this time.
That needs to happen. Okay, I'm on board with that. That's the war. That's the actual war that kind of fucked us in the first place. But I don't think SVB is an example of that.
Did Silicon Valley Bank even have a risk management person? Because Jerome Powell's statement made me think, okay, this is just like a small bank. They're just basically focused on keeping the deposits and debits in line, right? They're not really, they got a bunch of money because they're in Silicon Valley, and there's a bunch of Silicon Valley venture capital money flowing into all these companies, and these companies, they really don't know what to do. They just put it in the local savings and loan. So it's like this local savings and loan who never planned on having $500 billion, right? And all of a sudden they do. So they don't really know what to do with it. Oh, we just do what we always do. We buy the treasuries.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Which, you know, isn't a problem if you're talking about a smaller sum of money.
Right.
It becomes a problem when you're talking about a large sum of money, right?
Right.
This is weird because money is always, you know, you can't just let it sit there. It'll inflate away.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I'm jumping ahead here to your favorite, Elizabeth Warren.
I know. Oh my God.
But she does make good points. I know it's painful. I know it's painful to listen to her.
I have EDS, so
I know you have EDS.
is it WDS? And what are we calling it?
Right.
PDS? Pocahontas derangement.
There you
syndrome?
go. You have PDS. Yes, you have some PDS. But she does make some good points despite her shrill voice.
I can't stand stylistically. We'll get into it.
Big. No more cop on the beat looking out for a family of 4 in South Carolina facing an illegal foreclosure.
We can't do it. Everyone in our chat will want to defund the institution.
We could skip it if you want.
No, we can do it. It's okay.
Okay. This is a test.
I have to be strong.
Okay.
I have
it's
to be
free,
strong.
You got to listen. You got to take. I know you guys. You have like a reserve of free will that you've banked up. Okay. Now's the time to crack it open. You know, take a big hit, take a big sniff, take a hit of that free will, and let it power you through.
I constantly, when somebody scolds me and I agree with them, I'm like, what the fuck are you scolding me for?
Yeah,
okay,
right.
I agree with you on this.
Yes.
But everything she says just comes off as scolding. I try to avoid that. I don't want to scold people. Yeah.
No more cop on the beat looking out for your grandma whose bank account has just been taken over by a scammer. No more cop on the beat looking out for people getting ripped off by giant credit card companies that are charging illegal junk fees. It also means that the CFPB is no longer doing one of its most important jobs, examining big banks to root out illegal conduct before it happens, or at least stop it before more people get hurt. Chair Powell, if the CFPB isn't on the job right now, then who is administering JP Morgan or Wells Fargo's consumer compliance exams to ensure that they are following the law?
Senator, I believe that, and you would know, that Dodd-Frank moved all authority for examinations in the consumer space to the CFPB. We still have some jurisdiction.
We'll talk about that in a sec. But the answer to my question, please. If the CFPB is not there examining these giant banks to make sure they are following the laws on not cheating consumers, who is doing that job?
I can say no other federal regulator.
No one, in other words. So thanks to co-president Musk.
I was going to go on Musk, but see that's part of the thing I wanted to highlight here is because I don't think people understood that. I mean, I didn't understand that till all this started to happen. Is like, yeah, with them being cut now, there's just this huge policing gap that exists that hasn't been filled. I haven't even really heard anyone talking about filling it at all. It's just they just got rid of the police without anything to replace it with, you know. So
yeah, I think a lot of people have the assumption that this was a regulatory body that they created out of thin air. They didn't think, okay, well, all of these other regulatory bodies have a consumer protection bureau, agency, department, I guess is more accurate, right?
Right.
And we're going to take all of those departments and we're going to put them together into one organization. And those regulatory institutions are no longer going to deal with the consumer component of banking, right?
Right.
So by basically getting rid of this agency, you're getting rid of all of the consumer protection in banking.
Right. It'd be like saying like they're gonna get rid of, like, imagine if they got rid of the DEA. And they're like, we got rid of the DEA. It's like, well, I mean, the FBI and local police can, they can look at
Take
drug
care
stuff
of it.
too,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, well, wait a minute, like there's a specific organization. This whole job was to do this one thing, and it's like, okay, now it's like everyone's like, wait, where'd they go?
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad. It's totally fucking sad.
And CFPB acting director vote. Wall Street banks no longer have to show the bank examiners that they're not illegally opening accounts people didn't ask for, like happened with Wells Fargo, or charging illegal junk fees like the Bank of America did. But CFPB has jurisdiction only on banks that have more than $10 billion in assets. So what's happening in thousands of community banks all around the country, those that have less than $10 billion in assets? So Chair Powell, as you know, the Fed oversees consumer compliance for state member banks that have less than $10 billion in assets. Has the Fed suspended consumer compliance exams for those smaller banks, or is the Fed still on the job to make sure that those smaller banks are following consumer financial laws?
Still on the job, business as usual.
All right. By forcing the CFPB not to do its job, President Trump, Elon Musk, and the author of Project 2025,
Oh, cringe. Oh, cringe. Cringe.
Is that true though?
I don't know. I have no idea.
That Russell Vogue guy was involved.
They
in
gotta
2025?
throw in the partisan attacks.
Hmm.
It's so counterproductive too, because there probably would be a lot of right-wing populists on her side if she didn't throw in this fucking nonsense about Trump and Elon and Project 2025, right?
Well, I understand what you're saying. It's obnoxious because you're completely correct, obviously.
Yeah.
But the same token, it is true. I mean, this was Elon Musk's doing.
Yeah.
And so and it is Trump's doing too. And it was crazy because I typed it in. He actually, this guy Russ Fott, I didn't know this. He did write an entire section of Project 2025. So
He's some crypto guy.
it wasn't the part that came up in the Google search. It was about executive office of the President of the United States and the president's authority thereof. So,
well, I don't know what he has to do with these. And I've brought up Elon Musk's algorithm for production efficiency before. In his algorithm, he says in the optimization part that you need to cut because there's processes that may be superfluous, right? And he says if you don't end up having to add back 5% of the processes that you've cut, then you didn't cut enough. So he kind of uses that as a marker, right? He wants to cut some processes that are actually necessary, see that they're necessary, and add them back. So I have a little tiny shred of hope left. Sitch, I have like an infinitesimal shred of hope left. That, I mean, they reversed themselves on the nuclear scientists, right? They hired them back.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have more. I would have more hope, and I'd have more hope in terms. It's funny because whenever I talk to Sammy about this, she always says the same thing. She says, "Let him cook. Let him cook, Sitch." Okay, I would have more positivity, more optimism to let him cook. If this is my problem. The process that I see him engaging on in X is so stupid. And I don't know if it's the actual process or if it's like the political process for the fans, right?
Right.
Like he keeps posting things
process
on X that are just not true. And I'm like, and that worries me because I think, okay, if this is like, is this a process he's using? And I've always had this question about Elon. Does Elon actually believe this? Is this a process he's using to make these cuts, to make these recommendations? Or is he actually doing something intelligent behind the scenes and he just knows that he's going to placate the base by throwing them a bunch of like red meat? I don't know what's going on there. And Jesse Singal actually said something that's like, it completely encapsulates my feeling on this, is that every time Elon Musk tweets something, first of all, he's like obsessed with posting things, which would be good if it was like good information, but it's not. Every time he posts an accusation, you should just start a timer to say, okay, like, how long is it going to take till we find out that this accusation is untrue, or there's some other aspect of it that's like that he's not accounting for? And I swear, I keep fucking going through. I feel like an Alzheimer's patient. I keep getting taken advantage of. Every time Elon posts something, I go, oh, that's a good thing. I want to give him credit, Adam. I'm trying so hard. I don't want to be negative. I want to give him credit.
Did you see the Social Security of all the dead people?
Yes. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
That's one good thing. You're like, okay.
I see him post the Social Security and I go, oh my God. I'm like, okay, this is it. I can praise Elon. Like, that's totally crazy. That's totally correct. Oh my God. If, you have like, millions of people that are like past the age of 120, obviously is, not alive. This is a total scam. Oh my God. Like, praise Elon. I want to cheer him on. I want to clap, but I don't tweet anything because I'm like, okay, there's a chance, like everything else, that something's going to come out. So I just wait, but I'm optimistic. And then of course something comes out, right? Mm-hmm. And it says, oh, this guy who works for the Cato Institute, which is a very right-wing organization. Okay. There's not some lefty liberal organization. This guy works for the Cato Institute, talks about how they did this audit of the exact thing that Elon's talking about in 2023. And they talked about all these things, and that the list that Elon's looking at, that he posted all those numbers, those are not people that are receiving benefits whatsoever. Well, it's true that there is a problem, and that would be great if Elon fixed this. There is a problem in the system where there's all these like old people who basically died before like good electronic record keeping existed. So they never really got rid of their information from the database. He's looking at just like the database of information that shows people that had like still have numbers in the system. He wasn't actually looking at the database of names that people that actually get money from the government. There's not, which is available as well. And Elon knows that. The number of people, it was something like, it actually like someone, when they do the calculation of like how many people over 100 receive Social Security benefits, it's like maps on to the actual number of people in the country percentage wise that are over 100. Right. He was just looking at the wrong data. And then the Cato guy said something that was very interesting too, which I have mixed feelings about. And he has mixed feelings about, where he says, actually, ironically, if you got rid of all those old numbers that like people that are obviously dead, if you just got rid of them, you'd actually lose money. And the reason you would lose money is because a lot of illegal immigrants will use old numbers to get benefits because they can't get the benefits.
And they're paying into the system.
To pay into the system.
Shit.
Yes, because and maybe people don't know this, like, very often
they're
when you go
scamming the illegal immigrants.
Right. Yes. So, and I didn't even think about this when he said it. I said, oh my God, the light bulbs went off. I said, that's crazy. Because I always wondered this. I said, how do a lot of these illegal immigrants get jobs? Because for a lot of employers, obviously maybe not if you're, picking crops or whatever, but for a lot of employers, you have to give them your Social Security number.
They're scouring the obituaries.
Right. And so apparently there's like this industry where they take these like Social Security numbers that have never like left the system for dead people, and they give them to illegal immigrants to put on their forms. And what that does is it means that they don't get any benefits, but it means that they have money removed from their paycheck and is paid into the Social Security system for all Americans.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so this is where the
that
conflict
money goes to someone who's drawing money now. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so you get into this sort of conflict. And this is where I feel conflicted about it. Because on one hand, I'm like, oh, that's hilarious and good. If we're going to have illegal immigrants in the country, I would prefer them
they should
having
be
to
paying
pay taxes.
For old people, right?
They should have to pay taxes. They should have to pay, into the system, and not be able to draw from it. Like that should be part of the penalty. Like you have to pay in it and you don't get the payout, right? I'm totally in favor of that. That's great. But then at the same token, where I'm conflicted is I'm very much in favor of like cracking down on employers going after illegal immigrants, going after employers who are hiring illegal immigrants. I think that's crazy. And so even though you would probably lose some amount of money from the Social Security program if you crack down on this, I do think it's probably better to just, not make it so that illegal immigrants can't, get jobs in the country. I would be more aligned with that. So
Yeah. It is so much trade-offs. Thomas Sowell was completely correct when he said there's only trade-offs.
But then again, so it's that's why I get frustrated with Elon, is because he could if he knew what he was looking at. Well, here's the thing. I don't know if he knows what he's looking at. If he knew what he was looking at and he actually read the report from 2023 that talked about this, that the government fucking did under the Biden administration, or read, what this Cato guy was talking about, he could have framed it. He still could have framed it in a way that the Trump crowd would have liked. He could have framed it as, this is how illegal immigrants are getting work in America, because of this stupid old-fashioned system, and I'm going to fix that so they can't do that, right? Everyone would cheer that, but that's not what he does. And I don't know if when he promotes the information, like, oh, all these people are getting money when they're not. Like, does he know they're not getting money, or is he just stupid and he just looks at something, he doesn't know what it is, and he just blurts it out on Twitter, which is just not true?
I don't think he gives a fuck, to be honest with you. So I just think he puts it out there. He figures people are going to fact check it. It's going to get revised. It's like the truth is going to come out in the long run. I think that's his philosophical position. He just thinks it's going to come out sooner or later. I worry that it's never going to come out because it's just confirmation bias is one of our biggest problems. And while Elon, well, obviously, I'll change my mind about things based on evidence. Most people won't. Hopefully Elon will.
Mm-hmm.
Elon has a history of doing this, but I have to side with Sammy, because I have to say, like, let him cook.
Okay.
I feel like the opportunity, if there is waste, fraud, and abuse in the system, and there needs to be some technological update of the system, which many people argue there should be, right?
Obviously,
I think Elon is the guy to do it, right? Think about it. NASA used to literally create billions of dollars of trash every time they launched a satellite. And Elon Musk was the first one to say, do we really need to dump a $5 billion rocket booster into the ocean every time we go to space, right? It's just like a pallet of money floating up there. Can't we get it back? Which was like a revolutionary idea that nobody even really thought of. So if he's going to go into government and make that kind of equivalent understanding, right? That, look, let's instead of focusing on cutting and how we're going to be insolvent, let's see if we can find the waste and just take the waste out of the system, better optimize the system. I can't think of a person in our society that's better equipped to do that project. So I'm in the let him cook camp until we got to see how this stew turns out before we can make any hard and fast judgments. So I don't like the idea of defunding this institution, just because nobody's come out and told me, well, how many cops do you need to do this job, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, listen, that's fair. I will try. Okay, I will try my best to fan the flames of optimism. But I get so triggered. I get so triggered by people like spreading disinformation.
Right.
So I just go like, oh, it drives me crazy.
Ultimately, look, I don't like that either, because people are going to be solidified in their beliefs about the system. I just think it's more important that the system functions properly. And whatever people think is immaterial to the system, right? Like, nobody fucking understands banking at all. And who cares? Who fucking cares if they don't understand banking?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I worry, because if everyone has the wrong idea about the system, and those are the people that are either going to control a system or burn it down with pitchforks and torches, it's like the public perception does matter of how these things work. That's why I'm saying, like, if Elon is doing something different behind, like, I would, even though I think it'd be scummy, I would feel much better if I knew that behind the scenes Elon was like completely different than the way he acts on X, and that he knew that he was just fucking like manipulating people on X by saying things that are not true. What I worry is that he's literally using X as a way to get information about what to cut, and then he listens to what people say on X when they're wrong, and then he cuts based on that. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah.
But I will listen. I will try. I will try to be optimistic. I will try to let the cooking happen.
Didn't they hire the nuclear scientist back?
They did.
So they figured it out. They figured
well,
it out.
On that one, they figured it out.
Yeah.
On that one, they figured it out. There's still a lot of, I mean, there are some horror stories about people who had a lot of, that were like U.S. workers. There's horror stories making the rounds. I don't know if they're true yet, obviously, because it hasn't been confirmed. But there's horror stories about like how the cuts of U.S. aid basically made it so like a bunch of people who needed to be medically evacuated for pregnancies and for other reasons literally couldn't, because they were in some location where like, you know, the medical treatment's kind of sus, and like they're in, you know, kind of bad medical situations now because of these just like blanket cuts without consideration. So
right, yeah.
But
was it a
we'll
lot
see.
of people?
Listen, we'll see.
I mean, I'm more concerned about like my immediate family getting scammed. But,
Right.
Yeah. Call me selfish.
Wall Street banks an unlimited get out of jail free card so they can cheat working families, even while community banks continue to play by the rules. You know, for any Americans who have money deposited at JP Morgan or Wells Fargo or any other of the giant banks, they should now know that there is no one on the job to make sure that those banks are not scamming you. Only the smaller banks now have a cop on the beat to make sure that they aren't cheating consumers. You know.
Okay, I'm gonna jump ahead here. But
And the people that they scam too, it's always the super small accounts because they don't care if you take your money. Like if you live basically paycheck to paycheck, you're more likely to be scammed at one of the big banks.
They're not going to scam the big account, obviously.
Yeah, they're like, whoa, oh God, if they took their money out, we'd be fucked.
They're going to bend over backwards. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's the little guy that always gets fucked.
Yep.
I hate that. This is how I know I'm on the left, Sitch. I'm a bleeding heart for the little guy. So many people on the right are just like, fuck that guy. He's a fucking idiot. He deserves it. He deserves what he gets.
Right.
He's a retard. Fuck that retard.
Well, there's like a weird convection, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, not convection. There's a weird convergence, thank you, of sort of some of the libertarian attitudes of like buyer beware converging with the conservative non-libertarian attitudes of karma, I think.
Yeah.
And it produces this kind of like weird angle point that can create, you know, those feelings that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think like people should obviously reap what they sow. If you're just going to be a lazy lie about fuck your whole life and just have no ambition at all and, you know, never get a job, you know, never make an effort to improve yourself. Yeah, of course those people should get what they deserve. I don't think some elderly person being scammed at a bank is like, I mean, that's just a level of cruelty I can't muster, right?
Sure. Or, you know, like the example that Patrick Boyle was talking about, you know, he's some teacher who sells their house and, you know, believes some fucking influencer to use this bank, you know, what they thought was a bank and it wasn't.
Yeah, they thought they had a trustworthy source. They thought they lived in an environment where we had a high trust society.
Right.
And it turns out, oops, we don't have a high trust society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of things of concern, and you touched on a little bit of this, and I think this is important to clarify. There was a change in the law when the CFPB was created. The CFPB examines the banks and enforces the law, whereas the Fed only supervises those banks. Is that correct? Or how would you determine that relationship?
With the CFPB? So Dodd-Frank took a lot of the consumer compliance jurisdiction away from the other banking agencies and gave it to a newly created agency, the CFPB. We retained a residual amount of that, as we just discussed, which was banks under 10 billion in assets. But the CFPB essentially took all of that when Dodd-Frank came into being.
So as it was created, when you two were working together, the Federal Reserve collaborated with the Consumer Bureau when supervising those large banks, correct?
Yes, we still retain supervision over all the holding companies and also of Fed member banks.
And let me ask you this.
So the Fed is a bank of banks. When he says Fed member banks, he means all of the banks that are members of the Fed. They all have accounts there. So the Federal Reserve accounts are different than the consumer accounts. But that's what they keep track of.
Right.
And the Federal Reserve is also the bank for the United States Treasury. So
Then does the Federal Reserve enforce consumer protection laws now for things like money transmitters?
Not for money.
That would be the consumer
for
protection.
Fed
That would be
member banks.
CFPB.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
And
right.
so when we're talking about collaborating with the CFPB for financial technology firms, what would the Fed Reserve now do that if the CFPB, if the hypothetical is the CFPB no longer exists, what would be the Fed's role right now with respect to technology firms?
We don't have jurisdiction over, we have jurisdiction over banks and some
And
financial
that's
market
it.
utilities.
So let me ask you this, because I know there's a number of Nevadans who file consumer reports of concerns about fraud and predators with the CFPB. The Fed Reserve doesn't receive those reports, correct?
No, I don't believe
And
so.
you have no role when it comes to consumer protection like the CFPB does, correct?
Unless you're a Fed member bank that has 10 billion or less in assets, then we have jurisdiction.
Right.
On a
So there
consumer.
is a gap. If the hypothetical is true and what we're hearing that the CFPB is being shut down, there is a gap what we're hearing in enforcement out there, and particularly when it comes to consumer protection. Is that, would you say that's true?
Yes, for all banks that we don't supervise.
And I think that's the concern we're all having right now, is this concern of when we're looking to streamline government. And listen, I'll be the first to tell you, there's a lot of bloat. We need to streamline it. We need to address regulations and overreach. But there's a strategic way to do it, and not this burn down the house that is going to harm people across the country, including in my state, those Nevadans that are looking for some sort of enforcement around consumer protection law. So that's what you're hearing from many of us on our side of the aisle here.
Can I just very briefly add that we do have some residual enforcement authorities, but what we don't have is examination authority, and for the banks that the CFPB supervises.
Thank you. Let me ask you this.
see, she did it without being obnoxious, right?
She
She's
did.
a Democrat.
She did. No, she did good. It's crazy because, he gave a testimony at the House too.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to that yesterday to see if there was any parts I wanted to watch, and I couldn't make it. It's so much worse. Oh my God.
All the grandstanding.
Oh my God. And I'm pretty sure I've said this before in the show. The grandstanding and the obnoxious politics in the House committees are so much
bad,
worse than in the Senate. Oh God, it's terrible. I was like,
Jasmine Crockett, I think, is on that committee.
Yeah. Oh, and you think Elizabeth Warren, is annoying, right? And yeah, she's throwing, jabs at Trump and Elon and all this other stuff. But she's at least saying something that you're like, okay, well, there's information there. The person who was the Democrat head on the House side was, oh my God, it was what's her name? The elderly black lady that everyone fucking hates.
Oh my God. I know exactly what you're talking about.
What's
but
her
I can't
name?
remember her name. Yeah.
But it was just Maxine Waters. And I was just like, and what she was saying was retarded. I was like, holy shit. Really, Maxine? This is the direction you're going with this? Oh, it was so trash. I was like, God.
I'll see if I'll put it
terrible.
on today and see if how far I can make it.
No, yeah. I was just like, okay. There's one other clip I think that was kind of interesting here.
So, and I looked it up. The Federal Reserve. So the membership, national banks are required to be members of the Federal Reserve System and must also own a specific amount of stock in the reserve bank of their district. Okay. And there's the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Richmond, et cetera, all of these member banks, they kind of keep an eye on the economy in their area. And these are the governors that vote on whether or not to raise or lower the short-term interest rate. So,
right.
Banking has become very fascinating for me for some reason now. I think it's pretty interesting.
If you went home tonight and
spit it out already, Jesus, motherfucker! I can't.
He's an old
stand
man. Okay.
I can't stand this guy. This guy is a total grandstander, but
Mayor Powell, your
He's
spouse, said, I got a call today from our bank, and they're debanking us. They're worried about their reputational risk because they don't like our politics. Would you think that fair?
No, I sure wouldn't. And as I mentioned earlier, I too am troubled by the quantity of these reports, and really want to understand better why this is happening. One theory is that banks are just very risk averse around BSA and money laundering, and that's because we're so tough on them, and that they just don't. Any red flag is enough. But it may be that this whole thing with reputation risk needs to be thought about. It's actually coming out of our one manual that we use. We're taking that concept out, the manual that we've been using for account access for master accounts. We're just going to take that out. But I think this needs a fresh look, and I think it's time for that, and we're going to do that.
Well, I've asked our chairman, and he has agreed to invite some of the CEOs of some of the banks that have been debanking people. The CEOs,
Yes.
not their lawyers, not their PR consultants,
Not the lobbyists.
not their priests, them, the CEOs to come in and let's talk about this and find out what the hell's been going on.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
So that'll be interesting when we watch when that happens, when they get the bank CEOs in. Make sure to watch that. To ask them
banking
about the
should be like
debanking stuff.
phone service or cable service. It should be completely. Can't cut off someone's water because you don't like their politics. It should
Right,
be like
unless they're
public utility. Yeah.
Right, unless they're doing something wrong with the bank system, right? Unless they're
Look, if they're engaged in some sort of illegal activity, money laundering, child trafficking,
right,
nefarious business practices, obviously,
If they're just even if they're a virulent racist, you shouldn't be able to cut their bank services off. 100%. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, but that's good. You got Jerome Powell. So they're going to have that committee hearing, which will be interesting, and also you have Jerome Powell saying that they want to also crack down on debanking. So that's good. That's a good sign.
They gave Jerome Powell a bunch of opportunities also to take swings at Trump, and Jerome Powell did a good job of not wading into the political waters, which I thought was great.
Yeah, that was talking about kind of like annoying things was, the Democrats on the Senate, and it was like 10 times worse than the House hearing. They keep trying to get him to disagree with some kind of Trump policy, Trump tariffs or something. And he's like, I'm not going to comment on anything related to what the president's doing.
Well, look, as soon as
he's saying it again and again.
A lot of them don't understand, like, as soon as he does, he can move markets. Man, he says something like, the tariffs are going to be a disaster. The stock market's going to drop 1,000 points. He can't just do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fucking stupid for the Democrats on the committee to try to, in both the Senate and the House, to try to extract these sort of, they want a talking point. They don't even care. They just want a very short-sighted talking point they could run and say, look, the head of the Fed said Trump's a retard. Like, that's all they want. And you're right. You're completely right. Not only is, it's not really his role is the Fed chair to do that publicly, but also he doesn't want to affect the market in some way. So
they try their hardest not to move the markets. They still do.
Right.
They come out bullish or bearish on interest rates, and the market swings back and forth.
Right. Well, obviously that's going to have, that's going to have some effect, right? You know, the interest rate is going to have some effect, but
They try not to. They try to make all their languages, you know, they try to be like very non-emotional. Yeah.
right.
Which is good. So are we good, or read some
Yeah,
super
that was
chats
it
and then we're good?
from this.
All right.
So.
Let us know what you think in the comments below. Obviously, I read all your comments, and
Right.
I love to hear you guys yelling at me about banking stuff. I've been dropping a couple links, Sitch. I'm just like, this is, where are you getting this from? I have no idea.
Right. So there was one thing they didn't talk about it, and and it's kind of interesting. It's very interesting when I watch these like hearings, and there'll be a talking point that circulates. That's like the main talking point that's circulating on the news or like the Twitter space or the X space, I should say. And then it doesn't really come up even by the whoever's circulating it, whether the Democrats or the Republicans, doesn't really come up in these talks. And it makes me wonder if it doesn't come up because they know that the talking point's like stupid or bullshit or something.
Yeah.
Right. They don't really talk about it. They have a completely different conversation about it. And so, because like one of the things I kept hearing in regards to CFPB was people were saying, oh, it's this, what was the word they kept using? There's no oversight. There's no oversight into CFPB. No oversight, no oversight, no oversight. Unaccountable, right? And there were some Republicans that like they would say that, but then they would never ask the question of Jerome Powell about it, which is kind of interesting, which shows you something. But so I'm like, what does that mean? Because they are accountable to
the
House
Fed
and,
and the Banking Committee.
right? Because I was like, well, they are accountable to the House and the Senate in terms of these oversight committees. That is true. They can be, called in. They are overseen by the Fed, which is part of why they're asking Jerome Powell these questions.
This is the Fed is like the DOJ of the regulatory body.
But there's a more obvious
cops.
There's a more blatantly obvious way in which they're accountable that it's so weird. It's like everyone just forgot. They're completely thought past the sail on. Who's the head of the CFPB?
Who is it
right now?
Trump?
Russ Vought, that guy that they said that Elizabeth Warren was complaining was the Project 2025 author.
Oh,
how can you say? How can you say that this CFPB has no oversight when Donald Trump was able to fire the head of it and put in place whoever the fuck he wants? A guy who literally says, "Oh, just don't give us any funding. Just shut it down, the organization." How is that not oversight? The president literally puts the person in charge of the fucking organization.
Wow.
What the fuck? I was like, oh my God, how does everyone just thought right past this? So what they're talking about when they say there's no oversight is what they mean is they mean in this very like technical way in terms of that there's no, like most of the way that these organizations are run is that Congress has to write in the budget how much money they get. And for the CFPB, because I guess they wanted to keep it independent, they want to try to make it more independent politically from the parties, it actually doesn't draw its budget from the normal budgeting through the normal appropriations process. They actually don't get their budget from Congress telling them how much money they get. They are somehow able to draw their money directly from the Fed for their operating expenses. Right. Yeah. And so that's what they mean when they say there's no oversight. They mean there's no budget appropriations oversight into the CFPB. So I think people completely, they hear that there's no oversight. And like me, you would think, well, that means like they just a rogue agency that just does whatever they want. It's like, well, no, that doesn't make sense. Obviously, Trump literally is in charge of the person in charge of the CFPB. So that can't be what they're talking about. So
are they forced to publish quarterly financials like any other company that I don't know.
I don't know the answer.
All the banks have all the publicly traded banks have to publish all these financials. They have to submit financials to the Federal Reserve on a regular basis. So it's hard for me to imagine that the Fed is writing them just a blank check to do whatever they want.
Right. So Drew Dogman sent me on Twitter this article from Center for Renewing America.
Nice.
Okay. And they're complaining about the CFPB. They're like, why it should be shut down. Okay. So let's read this. It says, key problem number 1, duplication. CFPB has 14 core functions, all of which are duplicative of other federal or state responsibilities. For example, CFPB has a supervisory and regulatory role over financial institutions. So does the Federal Reserve, the Fed, which oversees banks, sets monetary policy, and assumes consumer protections.
Well, we just debunked that one because there's a regulatory body for like investing, and there's a regulatory body for consumer financial products, right?
Right.
You know
and
the difference?
As we heard,
like brokerage accounts versus like a regular savings or checking account?
Right. And also, as we heard directly from Jerome Powell, they transferred all the oversight and examination powers, which interestingly, they left out of this article. I wonder if that was intentional. The examination powers of banks over $10 billion to the CFPB. So he was saying the Fed only had the authority to do those investigations on banks under $10 billion.
Right.
So it's not doing a lot for me when the article you sent me, the first claim they make is just completely untrue about the powers being duplicative. Now, you could make the argument, as this article goes on to continue to say, is that yes, some of the state governments also can have authorities to look into these things on a state level. But that's like saying, well, the Fed and the police, the FBI and the police are duplicative agencies. It's like, no, they're not. No, they're not. They definitely have different jurisdictions and different abilities to go over things. And the whole point of the CFPB was to give, it's much harder for a state agency, which is on a budget, probably a much, much, much more smaller budget, to go after Chase Bank or Wells Fargo for ripping off customers all across America. They can't even do that. They wouldn't even have jurisdiction.
Yeah, they don't have jurisdiction over that.
As opposed to having a federal agency, which is able to draw its funding from the Fed and is actually able to go toe to toe with these fucking massive banks.
Yeah,
so
that's a great point.
So the idea that this is a duplicative agency to me seems like utter horseshit. So not really buying it. Also, in this article, they even bring up Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Andreessen. And we already know that they were both lying through their fucking teeth about this. It says entrepreneurs Mark Zuckerberg and Mark Andreessen have claimed, well, at least they said claimed, that CFPB has harassed them and is weaponized against perceived political opponents of the Biden administration. According to Zuckerberg, the CFPB began investigating Meta, which is not a bank, as part of the administration's broader efforts to censor content on social media platforms. So there's this trick, and the left did this for years, and it was very easy for people on the right to see through, where the left would say, oh my God, you're bad because you're racist. The government is doing something bad because they're racist. The police are doing something bad because they're racist, blah, 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 blah. And people on the right could see through that very quickly and say, well, no, wait a minute. They're just using racism as the excuse. They just want to, commit crimes, or they just want to do corruption or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Classic example. And now you have people like Mark Andreessen and Mark Zuckerberg who are basically doing that version on the right, where all they have to say is, well, they're just coming after me for political reasons because they're racist against conservatives. Even though Mark Zuckerberg is trying to, create a crypto with Facebook, trying to get involved in finance. So obviously the CFPB is going to be involved, where Mark Andreessen is, as we talked about, massively involved in these fintech, highly unregulated, very murky fintech organizations like Yada Bank and Synapse, which are scamming people out of millions of dollars. And so when they say, oh no, the CFPB is going after me, for my politics, you should take that with a grain of salt.
Man, I wonder if they made investors whole with depositors' money. Oh, that's so fucking wrong.
It is.
That's so
It is wrong. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's totally crazy. So.
Whatever. That's so fucked up. People are going to draw their lines. Which this goes back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, Drew the Dogman can disagree with us. It's very small in the whole scheme of things.
Sure, I just think I just don't want to see people get taken for a ride. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's like when I see people who just.
Well, I mean, you do want to see them taken for a ride if they're completely inept on the topic, right? That's
well, I don't listen. I don't. It's the same thing. Like when I see Andrew Tate, and I'm like, he's the most obvious grifter on the planet to me. Okay,
right.
This is a guy who if you have a friend and all they do, and I say this a million times, all you do is he just brags about how he rips people off and scams people. It's the frog and the scorpion. Okay, he's the scorpion. All he does is sting people, and he's joking about it to you, and you think you're gonna not get stung. You're crazy, right?
Yeah,
so I don't like to see people get taken for a ride. So Andrew Tate is taking so many people for a ride. We're just buying the bullshit that he's slinging. When there's a person who doesn't care at all. He's not a person that has philosophical principles except for look out for number one, and I'm gonna get away with everything I can get away with and scam people. That's his philosophical principles.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I don't want to see anyone be scammed by him, even if they're gullible.
Right.
Even if they're gullible. Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Mark Zuckerberg here and Mark Andreessen. They're just from my perspective, very obviously taking people for rides, doing things that are completely self-serving and harming the people that are advocating for them by making up this bullshit lie about, the CFPB is going after people for political reasons. No one can actually manifest that actually happening. And here you have the head of the CFPB under Biden actually talking about investigating banks for debanking people, but don't believe your lying eyes, I guess.
Yeah, people are not going to believe it. Like you understand what I'm saying about it's more important that the institutions get it right than that the entire population understands them. I mean, we're constantly living in that environment where a lot of things just work, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And people don't know how they work, of course.
Yeah.
But people not knowing how they work is part of what leads us down the pathway of the Chesterton's fence problem of people not knowing why that fence is there, so they just want to tear it down.
Oh,
because they're mad about something else, which they'll be mad about something legitimate, like again, debanking. You should be mad about debanking. That's a super fucked up thing, but you should actually try to get rid of it, not get rid of the organization that was going to get rid of it.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Fun stuff.
I know.
I love it. I got some insane tweet from somebody saying that I've embraced becoming a right winger and I uncritically support everything and anything Doge has done so far.
Well, not this.
Does that sound like just a fucking bald-faced lie to you?
I mean, definitely now, yeah.
That's pretty insane.
Like,
what do you mean now?
So you could use this now as evidence.
What the fuck do you mean now?
I'm teasing you.
Look, let him cook.
There you go.
Let him cook. But I'm watching him cook very, very critically, obviously. So
Right.
Yeah. We got to see where we're going to come out. I hate it because so many people who they make the declaration based on no evidence that everything is just going to end up being a catastrophe. Like if it does end up being a catastrophe, they're like, yep, I told you so. And if you're prudent and you take your time and examine the whole situation in totality, you do what I like to call the smart and prudent thing. They're like, oh my God, you should just listen to me.
That's not the profitable thing, though.
I think it is in the long run.
No, the profitable thing is to take a very hard stance saying either this is all going to work and it's going to be amazing, or it's all going to crash and burn. And then if you're right, then you're right. If you're wrong, you still get to pretend you were right and blame someone else, right? Anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
No, Nostradamus about Kamala having her 50 state landslide. Exactly. I don't know. Nostradamus didn't turn out to be so.
Well, no. I don't
like
in terms of like how Trump and Elon Musk and all stuff's going to turn out, right? If you say it's all going to work out for the best, you take a hard stance. Oh my God, we got the libs on the run, we got the left on the run. We're rooting out corruption. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, that's obviously going to be highly profitable to one side. And if it all crashes and burns down the road, you can just blame whatever, right? It doesn't matter. And then if it all
off ramp,
Right. Oh, well, it wasn't Trump's fault. It wasn't Elon's fault. It was something else, right? It was, some other, the evil Democrats, the deep state, or maybe the economy just went south, which a lot of people are predicting the economy is going to go south before Trump was even president. So
you're saying that I should
knows?
just uncritically support everything Doge is doing, and then
probably
if it all blows up,
that's
if
what
it
I'm
all
saying.
blows up in our faces, I can just say, well, the woke mind virus was a little bit more entrenched than we had first anticipated.
Exactly, right. But then the reverse is that is also true. Because if you're on here every day with your hair on fire, like, oh my God, Elon Musk, unelected official, hacking the database, stealing everyone's information, it's the worst thing ever, blah, 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 blah. And then after 4 years, nothing bad happens.
He fixes everything. Oh my God, Social Security's solvent.
But all you have to do is you just spin it in a way where you say, no. Look at all these bad things that are happening in the world. This is all because of Trump's fault. It's all because of Elon's fault.
Oh God.
That's what I'm saying. It actually is more profitable financially to just take a hard stance. It doesn't really matter if you're right or wrong. Unfortunately, this is the environment we live in right now.
I think both of our attitudes about the people on the committees that just throw at our hyperbole, high politics in all of our faces are completely disgusting. I think that says which way we want to go on this.
Yes.
Yeah,
I just want
it's
them
morally repulsive.
Yes. I just want them to talk to these people and get the information so they can make good decisions about governance.
Yeah,
right?
we want
Which
to
I
figure
know
out
is
what's
laughable,
accurate.
but,
We want to know how many cops we need on the financial beat.
Right.
Right?
Right.
How many complaints do they get? It was good to see the 4 recent complaints.
It was.
Yeah.
That's why I brought that clip up.
Yeah, it's great.
And I was glad. I forget that guy's name, who's much better than Greyjoy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But
He's like,
I would.
I don't want to just use the Wells Fargo thing that everyone's using.
Right, I would have had to vomit in my mouth if I had to bring up a clip of Brianna Greyjoy and agree with her or something.
How's she doing these days?
Oh God, who knows?
You don't miss Greyjoy?
Who knows?
She paid the iron price.
She did pay the iron price. She played.
She
played
rolled
the Jewish
her
price.
eyes. She rolled her eyes one too many times.
She did. She did. Yeah.
Oh, so sad. I think that woman's sister finally came back too.
She did. Yeah.
I wonder if they. I wonder if her sister filled her in on the Greyjoy story once she came back and was safe and sound. Oh, look, this nice lady rolled her eyes at you being in captivity.
I wonder if Greyjoy covered it. Like, it was okay for me to roll my eyes. She came back. She's alive.
Oh my God.
I mean, I hope she didn't say that, but
she's like, here's that bitch that cost me my job.
Right. But listen, that was a mistake, man. That was a huge mistake. Watching her and Robbie argue was like primo content.
It was. Oh, look, Sean's in the chat.
What's up, Sean?
Potentially criminal. He needs to come on more often.
Yeah, I heard Sean. I was listening to you before the stream. You argue with Joe and some of the other people about the Eric Adams thing. And I think you did a great job, Sean.
Yeah, I'm going to listen to that.
A really strong case. So I
agree.
I agree with your take like 100%. I think.
Yes,
that was a good stream. Everyone should check that out.
I'll drop a link to it in the chat so you guys can check it out.
Right. Fozimo for $20 says, now that Mike Benz is a household name and the housing crisis is a well you return to, you should review the stream he did with JF as frame game about the DI housing crash. BitChute the story they burned. I asked before. Wait a minute. Mike Benz talked to JF about the housing crash? Oh my God. That
would be good.
Hilarious.
Yeah, well,
okay.
That'd be interesting.
Jesus Christ. That's okay. That's interesting. Now I'm interested now, I guess. I'm interested to see what's up with that. If I can find it. J Macker Circuit 5, thanks so much for the $50. Says the worst part about being debanked is you have no access to your money until the bank cuts you a check. I even tried to get USAA to wire my money to my wife's Wells Fargo account, but they refused. Took 2 weeks until I got access to my money. Yeah, what happened, Jay, with that? Why did that happen to you? Do you know? Because I think, to me, like one of the sketchiest things about the whole debanking thing, and one of the first things that I don't know why they don't try to pass a law for this, is that they can like do all this shit where they debank you and then they don't even tell you what the problem was, which seems to me to be totally batshit crazy.
Yeah, it's no joke. You got to have multiple accounts because of this shit. Really, it's not good to have all your eggs in one basket.
No.
You deal with a bank, some sort of banking thing, and your money's going to be tied up who knows for how long. I've been in the same kind of situations, Jay. Not being debanked, but just trying to move money around, and they're like, no, you got to fill out these forms. What? Forms?
Right.
Why?
Right.
I mean, ultimately, it's probably for security. They don't want you to, they want to know that you're not some hacker, but.
Well, like on one hand, I understand the whole, while they're investigating, they maybe don't want to tell you because like if you are a criminal, obviously they don't want to necessarily alert you to. Though
Right.
you'd think if you're a criminal and they're like, we're investigating your account, you're gonna know what you did, right? Like,
yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe they should just tell you what's going
You'd
on.
be on
from the
alert.
beginning. Right? You would obviously know. Where if you're innocent, you have no fucking clue what's going on. You're just like, what?
You'd be like, all that cocaine money.
Yeah, you're like, oh shit, they're investigating me for the drug, right? So you're gonna know. Forking around for 6 months. Oh, I read that one. Where did we stop here?
Forking around, huh? That's
Yeah,
a
forking
good.
around.
That's a great screen name there.
It is. Oshacy for $10 says, due to recent events in my life that have me very triggered, no regulations, government sucks, rabble, rabble, rabble. There you go.
So you can't get in that mindset. Like just because you have some bad interaction with a cop doesn't mean like no law enforcement.
All cops are bastards.
Yeah, exactly.
A cab. All financial cops are bastards. A fat cab.
Unless, of course, it has something to do with building permits.
There you go.
Just California is the worst for this shit. Southern California, especially. So you can probably build whatever you want in Florida. You're like, I'm going to put a skyscraper in my backyard. Oh, yeah, here you go. Here's the permit.
Well, actually, no, so that's not true. So in areas, if you live, I don't know if this is everywhere, but there are some areas in Florida where if you live on the coast and there are hurricanes hit that area, you literally have to build your house. If you're making a new house, you have to build it on the second floor. You can't have a first floor because of the flooding.
Can you park your cars?
You can put
a
garage there. Yeah, you can park your car there. You can put a garage. You can put a pool. There's some regulation about like what kind of electronics can exist there. I don't know because I've never built a house, obviously. But you can't even have like a first floor. There's actually a lot of regulations. There's a lot of regulations for hurricane proofing in terms of your roof structure, in terms of I think you actually have to put hurricane glass on like all windows now.
Yeah.
So, because like back in the day, it used to just
your
be
window
like,
can go kill someone in a hurricane.
Or just because usually like what happens in the hurricanes is once the air gets in, that's how you like can get your roof ripped off essentially. It's because like the pressure between the outside and inside changes. And also, I guess, you don't want like glass and you don't want like debris flying in and out of your house and all this other shit. So there's actually a lot of regulations about hurricane stuff in Florida.
This live stream looks pretty fun.
What? Oh, the
massive legal brawl. Trump's DOJ
stuns
stuns everyone.
Right.
I watched Legal Eagles video on this. And a lot of people are, I mean, it ranges from, oh, this is a giant nothing burger to like, oh my God, this is the end of the American experiment.
Right. I don't think it's the end the end of the American experiment, but I think it's obviously corrupt. So
I think it'll be hilarious if once the last illegal immigrant is marched out of New York City, a guy comes out with the handcuffs Eric Adams.
Well, there's like no, I shouldn't say there's no way. There's a lot of low information voters. No. What I was gonna say is I think it's highly unlikely, and I think this is actually the foolish for Eric Adams. I think it's highly unlikely he's gonna be able to win re-election with all this in the blue area of New York City, and if he's all these accusations of him doing quid pro quos with Trump, I mean, it's going to be very hard for him to win the election.
Yeah, that's very true. This is why they didn't want to dismiss this stuff, because if he's of no use to them, they're like, yeah, whatever. We don't want to lose any political capital over this.
Right.
I mean, are they? It's hard to say. I mean, are they losing political capital with this? I'm not sure that they actually are. It's too complicated for people to actually understand what's going on.
I think they're going to, I mean, you're going to lose political capital with a lot of things that are being done. You lose any political capital, I think, with a lot of Democrats potentially voting in favor of things in Congress. But I mean, everything's being done via
means nothing anymore.
anyway,
Congrats.
So that doesn't matter at this point.
Sorry.
So, Libertarian Sasquatch for $2 says, this guy sounds like a PDF file. How dare you? Don't be mean to Patrick. Patrick's pretty
Was
based
that for
from the videos
Patrick?
I've seen.
Patrick has great content. So
he's got a nice smooth voice. Okay.
And he's super funny too. He's got the dry humor.
Right.
He's just going after the institution that you think should be burned to the ground. So
RBJ's fan for $5 says, one is using libertarian rhetoric to push monopolization. The other is using state rhetoric to overregulate as an extortion tool. In my opinion, they both suck. I agree. I agree with that completely.
The thing is that I don't know. I don't know where we're at with the regulatory body. I just know that nobody is giving me any evidence for the argument that they're making. They're basically making the argument that there's far too much onerous regulation on these companies or banks, but they're not, show me the money, show me the evidence, show me the receipts, right?
Right.
I don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Drew Dotman for yours says JP Morgan debanked firearm makers for JP Morgan debanked firearm makers. CFPB did nothing. Okay. They got rid of every firearm manufacturer. They got rid of some firearm manufacturers for some specific reason.
Maybe. Look, people are still, even if they debank them for a quote unquote good reason, they're going to default to they made up that reason.
Well, no. Like it would, if first of all, it'd be weird if Chase is just, I guess they could, if Chase just says, we don't like guns, we don't want to have anything to do with them. I guess it's a private bank. I don't know. Actually, I take it back. I don't think they should be able to do that. I don't think they should be able to do that at all. But if they that's very different than saying like, did they go after a specific gun manufacturer or gun seller or something? And then people just said, well, they went after someone who made guns, or did they say like, we're not doing any business with any guns? And then even if you said that, again, that has nothing to do with the CFPB. So I don't even know why you bring that up. It was recently that I said the CFPB is saying, okay, debanking is starting to get out of control. We're going to start cracking down on it. And then they say, oh, we're firing you and cracking down and closing down the organization. So now no one's doing anything about it. So when you say, well, in the past, they didn't stop, it's like, yeah, no one's suggesting otherwise. But also, what are the specifics of that?
I'm looking and it just says the bank closed accounts because of firearms purchases. JP Morgan limits gun industry ties. Wells Fargo keeps them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the specific situation you're talking about.
Because you think there should be a pretty good lawsuit against Chase if they're like, well, we're just not going to do business with, gun manufacturers who are doing some action that's completely legal, right?
JP Morgan Chase caught trying to block gun purchases. This is on the CatholicVote.org website. So
right. Well, I'd have to know what specifically happened. So there's also, you see that there's like this weird jump where it's like CFPB debanked people, they're bad. And that's like, well, maybe they didn't debank someone, but they didn't stop someone from getting debanked, even though I don't know specifics about that case, Sitch. It's like, oh, okay, so now we've completely moved the goalpost.
Mm-hmm.
Oshie for $5 says, Sitch, I think you're being far too literal with the CFPB debanks. I think the argument is as part of the debanking cartel deep state. Yeah, but that's retarded. That like you could be right in terms of well, actually, I think you're wrong. I think you're giving Mark Andreessen way too much charity. He's not stupid. This is a guy who runs some sort of massive,
$10 billion
billion dollar,
Yeah.
financial fund. He knows what he's doing. He knows that when he's talking to Joe Rogan and he says the CFPB is bad, and Joe Rogan says, how are they bad? There's a reason he didn't say, well, they're trying to regulate my, investments that are ripping people off, right? Because that's not going to sell. There's a reason he specifically goes to the banking, right? So I'm not sure why I have no clue why you're actually giving him charity. Do you think he's stupid? You understand that it's obviously a manipulation tactic. It's a very dishonest persuasion tactic. That he's just trying to do something that's within his own benefit financially, and he's trying to get people on board with him politically.
Yeah, I've never heard of this guy, but I think he looks like he could be a serial killer. So
right.
I think he gives off the vibe of, this is a guy who will rob you blind and laugh to his friends about how stupid you are.
That's how it looks to me.
As he steals all your money. So
Chuckle Desk for 27 months says the reason why they want to get rid of it is the perception that they're doing nothing, which scares you more, politically debanking or a scam.
Scam.
That doesn't make any sense.
Shot.
If they're going after people that are getting scammed, and you're like, well, no one's going after them for getting debanked, and they're like, you're right, we should go after them for debanking people. Oh, you're shut down now. Oh, okay.
Look, every single American needs to worry about scams. There are plenty of people who don't even think about politics. Like they're never going to get debanked from politics.
Right.
So if you're worried about the fringe number of Nazis in the world that could possibly get debanked, or even like drug traffickers who could get debanked because they're literally trying to launder money, or scammers who are getting debanked because they're literally scamming people out of money and trying to launder it. Like, what are we even talking about?
Well, and also think about how you're getting played. Because if you think about it, it's actually a completely nonsensical position. You have an organization that's trying to stop banks from scamming its customers, okay?
Right.
And it has stopped banks from scamming its customers. It has got people, billions of dollars back who are being scammed by large financial institutions. And you go, well, that's fine, but they're not stopping people from getting debanked. And you're saying this at a time period where the Republican Party literally controls all three branches of government and could so fucking easily pass a law,
rain down terror on them,
pass some kind of law that makes debanking people for political reasons illegal. Could do that.
Punishable by death.
Yeah, could be punishable by death. Would be the easiest fucking thing on the planet. But instead of doing that, they're like, no, we're going to get rid of the people that are stopping banks from scamming you.
That are stopping us from scamming the little people.
And how does that make any sense?
Stopping Mark Andreessen from scamming you.
And then the people that financially would benefit from scamming you are all in favor of it. It's just so obvious. It's so obvious. Just think about it. Just think about how it doesn't make any sense, right? Brian for $20 says the moral hazard was bailing out all the accounts to the full amount above $250K. I think because they were mainly business accounts. Why should the government backstop poor decisions for banks without any bad outcome?
Yeah. Oh my God. So you put your money into a bank and the bank goes bust. That's a poor decision. Like they could have had a completely different risk profile when you open the account. Are you supposed to monitor your bank every month go to the fucking profit and loss statement and look up, oh my God, they have some risky investments going on. Are you supposed to constantly do what the fuck?
Well, here's the argument I think I'd make. You obviously need, like, if the bank is actually doing something wrong, or the people that are putting their money in the bank is doing something wrong, you can't just have a blanket government bailout because then everyone would just do everything wrong, right? But if you have a situation with like the SVB bank or whatever, where they weren't like doing something that sketchy really at all, shouldn't that afford them, shouldn't then it not apply to them because they weren't really doing anything wrong, right? They weren't doing some big risky maneuver that they should have known better.
Yeah, they weren't at all.
So I think that has to come into consideration.
Man, this is just like this whole concept is you basically need like a taster for your food because you could be buying poisoned food, right? Like you need to have that level of sophistication to understand the type of products that you're buying because it's just completely buyer beware. Like, how do you know? Like, I'm assuming all of you have your money in a bank somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it Sitch, are you doing this? Are you checking the finances of your bank constantly?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I make sure that my bank's FDIC insured.
Yes. Yeah.
But I don't check their finances, so. And I'm not some millionaire, so it's not like I have to worry about any of that stuff.
I just if you think that the bank is doing stupid shit, right? Why do the depositors have to suffer? Like, why can't you just make the depositors whole? Say, go put your money in a different bank, and we'll just put this bank out of business. Gone.
I think
you're literally saying putting your money in a bank is like gambling, going to a casino and gambling.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I think though the concern would be that, because you're right, as long as like people are investing in something that's not like obviously sketchy, it's a FDIC insured bank, blah 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 blah, right? There's an exception. There is an expectation of certain behaviors, and obviously with SBB bank example, they didn't really do anything crazy. And you're talking about making the depositors whole. I agree with that. But in a situation where they are doing something sketchy, theoretically, or something wrong, I think part of the problem is that the penalties should be way higher to really put the fear of God into these people before they engage in these, scummy practices.
I think this whole moral hazard argument is basically trying to get regulatory some sort of regulatory system on the cheap. You basically want to turn the customer into the regulatory agency of the bank because you don't want there to be any kind of regulatory agency over
No.
bank.
So that's why I'm saying, okay.
I mean, this is the same idea that we don't have any police. Everybody's just going to own a firearm and defend their own property. That's basically what it is.
You agree with the concept that like if there's no if a bank does something wrong, if every time a bank does something wrong, they all just get bailed out, and this is what kind of came out of the housing crash, right? Then you lose the incentive for the banks to not just fuck up and do risky shit because they know they're going to get bailed out by the government, right?
Look,
and no,
if you
wait,
want
hold on. I know.
Hold on. I agree with you. I agree with you. If you want to put the moral hazard on the bank, by all means. He wants to put the moral hazard on the
customer.
On the customer, the guy who just puts his money in the bank.
Yes, exactly.
That's ridiculous.
So, right.
Like,
so
you haven't done anything to the economy in any way, shape, or form. They already have the money. The money is already in the bank, right? You haven't increased the money supply. The money printer hasn't gone burr or anything. If you just make the people whole and move them to a different bank and close down the entire fucking bank that you don't like. If you want to make that argument, fine. It's when people start making the argument that, small businesses need to lose half of their fucking life savings so that we can what? So that because they should have been better regulators of the bank, Sitch?
No, right. So what I was going to suggest is that you're correct. The moral hazard shouldn't be on the customer. That is a person that puts their money in the bank, whether it's a person or a small business. The moral hazard should be on the bankers. And so that's why I was saying, yeah, I'm fine with bailing out or transferring the accounts of the people, that are the customers. But then to offset that, you should be much higher penalties on the bankers. So you don't, so that there is that moral hazard exists, right?
I'm saying like banking should be like restaurants. Like you should be able to walk in to any restaurant in America without a fucking taster because you're
I
worried
understand.
you're going to be poisoned by the food, right?
Right. Right.
Banks, you should be able, as just a retail investor of the bank, right?
no,
You
I get
just
it.
need your bill pay. You just need to pay your mortgage on time, right? Like I even think the fees are completely excessive in some of these banks. You need to be able to put your money in any fucking bank and know that that money is safe and it will be there.
Right.
And there is absolutely no reason that can't happen. Because if the bank does something crazy with your money and fucking whatever, like it doesn't matter. You can make the customer whole.
Right.
It doesn't change anything.
Nolan Gams for 16 months says, are the CFPB fines even effective deterrents? They seem tiny compared to the scammers' profits. It seems to happen regardless of the existence of the CFPB. Yeah, that's so there's two issues, which number one, I mean, obviously the money they get back for the consumers is just like an all around good. But in terms of the fines, you're probably completely correct. And that is like the big problem with all this stuff is that, yes, they're probably, and I agree 100%, the CFPB shouldn't be defunded or weaker. It should be way stronger. And the fines they're throwing out should be way more devastating. Or actually, I think the thing that'd be really, I think the real way to solve this problem isn't to necessarily increase the fines, because part of the argument that they always give about increasing the fines is they're like, oh, well, if there's some branch of, Chase Bank somewhere or H Wells Fargo, whatever the fuck it was, if there's some branch of this bank that's doing some bad action and you throw on them some like mammoth fine, you basically destroy the bank for everyone involved that doesn't, wasn't maybe not involved in the corruption. So that's the excuse they always give. So maybe the solution to this is not necessarily to increase the fines, but to say, okay, we're going to throw criminal penalties at these people, because that's the thing they never do. The people that are involved in this need to go to jail. And I think that's really the way you need to up the deterrent on bankers doing a bunch of, in Wall Street, doing a bunch of shit, is that even if these people go to get fined, their company gets fined, right? They don't personally get fined. They should personally get fined, and they should go to jail if they're involved with this shit. Like the people involved in creating the fake accounts at Chase Bank, or giving the junk fees or whatever, those people should be personally fined, and they should personally go to jail for that action.
Yeah, I think, wasn't it lower level account executives that were doing that kind of shit to just kind of boost their numbers?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't like the CEO was telling them to do this stuff. Right.
If you're a corrupt cop, I mean, you're going to go to jail, right? I don't see why you shouldn't throw some corrupt banker in jail.
Right. Bankers should be afraid that if their boss comes to them and says, hey, I want you to open a bunch of accounts, fake accounts, because I got to boost my numbers, they should be like, okay, we're going to go to jail if we do that. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that should be like on the front of everyone's mind. So
they can get a year and a day. It doesn't need to be excessive. They don't need like 20 years, right?
I think it should be excessive. I think it should be like real.
20 years?
Oh my God. Throw the book at them. Okay.
They're going to come out hardened criminals.
Listen, politicians and bankers should get really stringent prison times, in my opinion. Okay. I think they should get hit with the hardest. I think politicians should always get hit the hardest in terms of, if they're doing corrupt shit. Got to crack down on it. Cake Sauce, thanks so much for 33 months. Says, as always, thanks for the show. Can't wait for my copy of the comic. You both rock. Well, thank you. Cake
Look,
Sauce.
you guys need to update your address too. I've got a couple people that I've sent the comic out and then they update their address. Like once I send you a tracking number, it's going to your old address.
Right.
So, no joke. I have 500 orders ready to go out today. So you need to update that address. Otherwise, it's going to go someplace else. I did another update on the Indiegogo too. So everyone should have got an email to this effect. So click on the email and fix it up. Potentially criminal for $5.
Says Chesterton didn't contemplate the government refusing to be held accountable. The government made it so we can't understand the way it operates. Yeah, there definitely is a massive lack of transparency in the system. And that's part of the thing. That's what I would like for Elon and Trump to really go whole hog on, whole hog on is trying to make the government and the way it functions as transparent as humanly possible, so people can really understand what's going on there. I think that's pretty key for most of these things.
Right.
Soldoge for $5 says, yes, people selling fake things should be investigated. They're heartless monsters who should lose money. Anyway, can I get 10 more units of free will? Whoa, shots fired. What are you talking about? Everyone knows free will is a completely real commodity. Okay. And by the way, as I've said from the beginning of the show, we do not sell free will here. Okay. When you give us a donation, super chat, out of the goodness of my heart, I just give you free will free. That's why I always say you get 10 free units of free will. Okay. You get it for free, and it's free will as my thank you for the donation. Right?
Sitch, have I told you how free will is safer than crypto?
You haven't. You should tell the chat.
Guaranteed.
Yes.
Free will will never be stolen. No one will embezzle your free will from you. It is locked up safely in your own personal free will account that nobody else will ever have access to. So
now to be
your
clear,
crypto, they get your wallet number, you're fucked. Okay. Our free will safer than crypto.
That's true. It is.
Yes.
It is. So buy some. Donate today, and maybe we'll give you some for free. Soldos for $5 says, you guys should do an episode on Ahmed al-Shara, crazy story of people you least expect adopting liberal institutions.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the guy that's in charge of Syria now.
Mm-hmm.
Soldos was saying he's doing some base things, so I don't really know much about it, but may look into it. J Mac Circuit Far, thanks so much for the $200. Oh my God, this is why you got debanked. They're like, why are you giving money to these crazy people on YouTube? USAA claimed I was using my personal account to conduct businesses overseas. I bought a bunch of crap that wasn't business related at all. When I showed them the proof, they proceeded to tell me they have the right to end banking with anyone for any reason, including for no reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, in terms of the debanking thing, there should be some regulations in terms of they can't give a reason. Yeah, like, if they say, oh, you're doing this, and you're like, I'm not doing this, and they acknowledge you're not doing this, and they should just say, oh, okay. Not this like better safe than sorry, like eat shit attitude that the banks definitely have. So
I wonder if they just made a mistake and they're like egomaniacs. I can't acknowledge that I made this mistake.
Well, maybe those fines are effective, and that's why they're just like, fuck it, they're not going to take a risk. I don't know. Fast and Bulbous for $5 says, don't know how the U.S.-Russian talks will go, but I'm now convinced Trump will give black materia to Sephiroth at the Northern Crater on a platter. Wow. Well, first of all,
what is that?
Fast and Bulbous, you fake fan. Everyone knows that Cloud gave the black materia to Sephiroth at the Temple of the Ancients. Okay? Not at the Northern Crater. The Northern Crater is where they ended up in the final fight.
Did I stumble into a geek off?
How dare you?
Are we having a geek off right now? I'm
just teasing you, Fast and Bulbous. That is actually a very funny comparison. Now that I could see the meme already in my mind. You got Putin with the Sephiroth hair. You got Trump with the Cloud hair. He's already got the yellow hair too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's holding Ukraine in his hand, and he's bowing down, and he's giving it to the Putin. Yeah. Now, listen, I have hope that there'll be something positive will come out of those talks. Okay. I did see a video of, who was it? I don't know if it was Ryan Macbeth or someone. They were basically saying that like so much of Russia's economy right now is built around producing munitions that they're skeptical of like, how is peace going to work? Because it would like destroy the economy essentially.
Oh,
so I don't know.
That's awful.
Right. So that's bad. Like if that's the situation. So maybe I shouldn't be optimistic, but I'm going to hold that hope. I'm going to be optimistic. Some peace agreement will be reached. So.
Yeah. Be nice.
J-Mac for Joe says, no, wrong, Sitch. Is a cutscene proving it. What? How dare you? What are you talking about? Wait a minute.
So you're wrong?
Am I wrong here?
You're
It's been a
wrong about the
while.
black materia? Can't believe you'd be wrong about such a thing. You're usually so good.
Oh
at
my
this.
God. You're right, J-Mac. I just realized you're right.
Look at this.
Oh,
Sitch
what
coming
a
down
fool
with this.
I was.
The sanctimonious, you're
What
wrong.
a
And it
fool
turns
I
out
was.
he's
You're right.
wrong.
Oh my God. I was wrong. I was the nerd wrong.
Well, look, at least he's willing to admit it.
I know. You get at the Temple of the Ancients, you transform into the black materia. Cloud. Don't you give it to... Wait a minute. I feel like you give it to Sephiroth twice. Don't you give it to Sephiroth and then somehow you get it back? And then, yeah, you're right. Then you're in the crater. You're completely correct. You're in the crater. And then Sephiroth's body is there in the Mako crystal. And then all the weapons pop out. Okay, completely correct. You're so correct. What a fool I was. Thank you for correcting me.
Someone in the comments was saying that we're getting memory leaks because we don't refresh the chat enough. So your browser might be crashing because you.
I reload I reload the entire tab a bunch.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I mean, that is what happens. Yes, that is what happens.
So you're trying that.
Yes.
Already.
So Mr. Jarrah says, I'm telling Sammy on you. Listen, you can tell Sammy on me. Sammy's a fake Final Fantasy VII fan. Okay. She just likes Kingdom Hearts. She's never played the original Final Fantasy VII game. Okay. And I'm playing the remake and she's watching. Okay. So I'm not afraid of your threats, Solidoge.
Does she make you watch? Or does she make you play while she watches?
Yes.
Because she wants to know the story?
Yes.
I've had to do that before.
Exactly, yeah.
You're
FF7
like, oh my
is
God,
crazy.
this game is boring. And your wife is like, no, come on, I want to know what happens.
Well, FF7 is a kind of a bad game to watch because unlike the original, there's so much like bullshit. In the remake, there's so much side quest bullshit, terrible writing. Oh God, it's written so poorly. It's so depressing, guys. I want to like it so badly. The fighting's really good, but the dialogue is just, it's so cringe. It hurts. It hurts my soul. Okay.
Is it an American game?
No.
Okay, so that happens a
Japanese
lot
game.
with translation. I just imagine
well, it's not translation.
That
it's basically the insane person who wrote the Kingdom Hearts game somehow got tapped to write the Final Fantasy VII game, and it's just a disaster, essentially.
Oh, okay. So it is bad writing. They're writing it in English.
Well, no, they're writing in Japanese, but the translation isn't the issue.
Well, sometimes I think the original Japanese, the dialogue is not cringe. Well, but it's like cringe in translation.
There's a trick I've noticed that if you write, like it's easier for you to read cringe dialogue and not be cringed by it than to hear it. It always hits you a little differently.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And also the Japanese voice acting is always better. So yeah, if you have the subtitles on and you have the Japanese going, it's going to be better, but it's the same shitty dialogue. So.
Right. My wife is listening to some Korean like reality television dating show or something. And it's, oh God, the translation. Well, the dub is, the dialogue is completely cringe and the performances are cringe. Everything about it is cringe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just interesting that they would dub something like that.
Right. What do you mean? It says Nomura is the director. Is he not? He was the director for Remake, wasn't he?
Let's see here.
Says he's creative director. Whatever. He fucked it up. It reeks of his overcomplication. You can't really appreciate this unless you play the game, Adam. But like the original Final Fantasy VII game, which came out in like the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's a pretty complicated storyline of like, you know, aliens, evil governments, fake memories, failed genetic clones. There's like a lot of like sci-fi, like complicated shit going on.
I do love it, man. Everything. I'm like, I'm interested. Tell me more.
No, it's good.
More.
It's good, right? And you have the main character who like he has like a fake backstory and fake memories and all this stuff. It's like great. Okay. I love it. But then when they like finally remake the game, people have been asking them to remake this game for like 30, 20 years. Okay. From the beginning.
It's like
Said,
a
remake this game,
Western.
right? They remake the game and they're like, okay, the storyline wasn't complicated enough. Now let's add alternate timelines and
no.
Yeah,
no.
we have to have like the multiverse. Everything has to have
No
fucking
way.
multiverses now. Yes.
Why? Why?
Yes. It's like, oh my God, why are we doing this? Really? The original game wasn't complicated enough?
Yeah.
And then it's just also just the dialogue is just so fucking cringe. Oh my God. It's like the worst, shittiest anime, like the most tropey anime stereotype crap writing imaginable. And I watch a fuck ton of anime. I like watch anime. I like a lot of anime. And this is just the dialogue in this game is just so bad. It's painful. The characterization is so bad. It's painful. And it's really weird. Every character, male or female in that game, wants to fuck the main character. It's so bizarre. Now, Sammy likes that
play as
aspect
the main
of it.
character?
Yes.
Oh, well, what's wrong with this? This sounds like a good game to me.
No, it's because it's like a big part of the original story is that you think the main character is like a badass. And then you find out that his backstory is a lie and he was like kind of a loser. And then it's like you becoming a badass, right? Like you becoming the thing, like you becoming the hero. Like you thought you were the hero, but you weren't, but then you become the hero. And I always liked that aspect of the original game. And then, but in this one, it's just weird. Every character wants to fuck the main character right off the bat, whether they're male or female. And it bothers me.
Wow.
It's like too.
You got the guys coming after you. That's a little uncomfortable.
Yes. The villain wants to fuck you. Every man that looks at you wants to. It's so weird. It's so weird. And this is, I mean, Sammy likes this aspect of the story, right? But I don't. I'm like, no, this is bad characterization. Okay. Fast and Bulbous for $5
the movie comes out.
Yeah, we'll see. Fast and Bulbous for $5 says, don't know how the U.S. talks will go. Oh, I read that one. Brian, for $20, thanks so much. Says SVB Bank could have taken a loan from the Fed or any other private bank. People don't have to look at bank records because they're protected up to $250K. If you don't want to, then put your money in different banks.
Okay.
Sodos for $5 says, jokes on you, Adam. My money is always secure because it's in the form of uranium deposits strategically placed in graveyards across town. No need for the CFPB. Well, there you go. That's true. That's a good point.
I didn't know uranium was a profitable commodity, but good for you, man.
Right.
Brian,
for another $10 says SVB didn't need to have a bank run. They could have paused withdrawals until they set up loan terms to backstop their liabilities. But why didn't they do that?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
But can I invest my free will to get a 25% interest rate on it? Hell yeah. Are you kidding me? We give a 50% interest rate. Your free will compounds secondly.
That's right. That's right, Brian. If you take the free will that you've gotten to us, we didn't sell it to you. You just got it as a gift for free, right? You donated. If you take the free will, the free will that we've given to you so generously as a donation, and you give it back to us, we will reinvest it in a free will account with a 50% interest rate.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. 50%.
That's right. Your free
now, I'm not
will
going to tell you what the 50% is over, but I'm just going to tell you it's 50% interest rate. Okay.
Yeah. Boom. Look at that. Your free will grows.
JMac for $5 says, that's fine, Sitch. Your nerd penance is to do a zero material run using only Kate Sith and Yuffie. Oh, that's evil. That's evil. How dare you? So listen, I am upset because I got to the point in the Final Fantasy VII remake where I got Yuffie, who I fucking hate as a character. And I started playing with her, and she's actually really good, and it bothers me because she's so annoying. But she's actually really good, and I'm like, oh, now I'm conflicted. JMac for another $20, thanks so much. Says, Adam, you would legitimately fall in love with the characters in Final Fantasy VII, especially OG Cid. It has some of the best humor, some due to mistranslations. Sitch, you need to show Don Corneau's mansion scene when Cloud gets picked.
Is this in development? Is this in development into a movie? I mean, if you guys think it's so good.
No.
I mean, that's why isn't it not?
Well, there is a movie, but the movie's like a sequel, and it's also there's a movie that's a sequel that is beautifully animated. The fight scenes are so fucking cool, but again, the storyline is just dog shit. Tragic.
Oh, wait a second here. There is a Final Fantasy movie.
There's two. There's one that's
Okay.
based off Final Fantasy VII, and then there's Spirits Within, which is not based on any of the games.
Okay.
It's just this one thing that everyone fucking hated. So
Yeah. That's the one with the Gaia, right?
yeah, I remember seeing it and thinking it was trash. So
Spirits Within. Okay. And what is the one that actually has to do with the thing?
I don't know, just like a Final Fantasy VII movie, I guess. I don't remember what it was called. Advent Children. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. You're not gonna like it. I mean, if you watch it for the visuals, it's like really cool, but the story is gonna be like a complete confusing mess. You're gonna be like, what am I looking at here?
No, I want to know if they're developing another script, if they're going to make another movie out of it.
I don't think so.
Why not?
Because they have this weird thing. Maybe it's a Japanese thing, maybe specific to Squaresoft or whatever. People have been asking to remake this game forever, and they're like, we don't want to do it because it's just unlike in America where they're like, we'll remake something forever for like the money printer go burr. They're like, no. It has to be different. It has to be different. We can't just remake the same thing. We have integrity.
How's it got Advent Children has a 7.1 rating on IMDb, which is just, I mean, that's unheard of. That's like stratosphere.
Is it only has 50% on Rotten Tomatoes
for IMDb?
Right.
Oh, maybe it's like a bot thing or something.
Or it's just, the nerds like it, which I understand, but
is it animated or?
It's CG, yeah.
Okay. That's
Beautiful
the problem
fight
with these
scenes,
games. Like,
but,
you got to invest 80 hours to play one of these games.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything else at the same time. You got to.
That is true.
When I watch movies, I'm usually doing something else at the same time.
Well,
it depends. If I'm rewatching a movie, I do something else.
Square's attitude is upsetting because you could make Final Fantasy VII, the original, not this remake shit. You could make the original into like a really great Netflix long form TV show.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's why I'm like, why is it not in development somewhere?
It should be, but they're stupid. It's because they're stupid is the answer to the question. So you think, I don't know, you think they'd see One Piece and say, oh, listen, we can get a piece of that One Piece action.
Yeah, exactly.
It would make $1 bajillion. Even if it sucked, it would make $1 bajillion.
Most of the studios always have every single property that's available in development. Somehow, somewhere, they have some writer that they're paying.
They haven't sold the rights to anyone, so it's not going to be. Seller for $2 says, I forgot to tell you, Dane also paused the comments on his video. I've only seen half of it, but I'd like to see you guys respond to it on the show. He says you engage in dishonest practices. By the way, I got the comic today. Well, there you go. I'm glad you got to engage in our dishonest practices with us together.
Nice. I'm glad you got the comic. Tell Dane, fuck off.
Send me the video. I am curious to see it. It'd be fun.
What is obviously everyone always makes that charge, but Sitch and I definitely, we go out of our way to keep each other honest and also just to be honest with you guys. So
right.
I don't know why we would lie about anything. Like our whole shtick is basically trying to respect the audience without necessarily agreeing with them. Like we disagree with you guys often, but we don't have to get nasty about it. Where I feel like a lot of content creators, if you don't agree with them 100%, they just get fucking nasty. It's like, why? Why is that a necessity, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Soto's Return says, this was a heated but needed episode. Good discussion all around. Some of you, though, may be questioning your decision, your free will even. Then come on down to Soto's official bank of free will, sponsored by Sitch and Adam. There you go.
Look at this. He's making use of that 50%
That's right.
interest rate.
Right. So those $102 says, for a small investment of free will, I can help your free will make more free will. At 15% APR, you'll have more free will than you know what to do with. So come on down to Solo Doge's Bank of Free Will, sponsored by Sitch and Adam. There you go.
Cool.
That's true.
Let's do it.
We will insure
We're
the Bank of
opening a
Solo Doge
bank.
by up to 250,000 units of free will. Okay. In case he goes crazy and blows it all in crypto.
When we interview people for a loan, a free will loan, we have to see if they're actually capable of maintaining free will.
Right.
We'll have to go to them and say, I'm sorry, but you got no free will, bitch.
There you go. Brian Schiff for another $5 says, oh my gosh, it's like a pyramid scheme, but I'm getting it on the ground floor. Take my money. Very well. Thank you so much, Brian Schiff. That's 10 free units of free will directly into your free will account that will now be accruing 50% interest.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You didn't realize this was an investment channel, did you?
You didn't realize it, no. J-Mac, our second fire, thanks so much for the $20. Says, Adam, here's all you need to know about why the original
OG is better.
I think crashed.
Than the remake Rebirth. There's a part where a bad guy murders a bunch of people. In the OG, the floor walls are covered in blood. But in the stupid remake, it's purple shit. Oh, yeah, I hate it when they do that. So they go full Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino,
yeah.
They go full Quentin Tarantino in the original, but they dial it back. God, I hate it when they do that.
I forgot about that. It was so weird because, there's like the super iconic scene where you basically get arrested by the police and then you wake up and the jail cell doors open and there's just like this trail of blood and you're in this like giant like corporate office building and you have to follow this trail of blood and bodies like up like 4 flights of stairs and like all this shit. And you're like, and then you see like the president of the country dead and he's got this giant sword like through his chest. And you're like, oh my God, it's like so crazy because you thought the president of the company was going to be the bad guy. And you're like, what the fuck? He's dead. And so it's like this really cool like sequence. And then in the remake, there's like just like purple goo on the floor. And you're like, what? Why are we, this is Japan. Why are you censoring blood? What the fuck is happening?
Yeah, I hate it when they do that. They're like, oh, this has to be family friendly. We got to get our E for everyone rating.
I don't know. It was a really weird decision. I think it's supposed to be like the Genova goo or something, but it was really stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways.
All right. This was a great show. Can't wait to see the comments. Hope
Thank you guys for coming. Thank you all for your incredibly generous donations, and we'll see you all on Thursday.
Yes. Bye-bye.
See you later.